Chapter 3260. Su Zimo defeated all of the wolf avatars. The leopard demon's speed was astonishing, but it still couldn't escape Su Zimo's eyes. The three figures fought in the sky above the myriad beast ridge. Su Zimo's aura was monstrous, and the two heavenly venerates were suppressed. This was indeed beyond everyone's expectations. Although Su Zimo didn't use any spirit treasures, he seemed to be covered in divine weapons. His fingers were like swords, his fists were like hammers, his elbows were like spears, and his legs were like whips. He forced the two heavenly venerates back. If this continued, the two heavenly venerates would probably be suppressed by Su Zimo. Sigh. Seeing this, Su Rue sighed in his heart. No wonder fellow Taoist Su is so confident and dares to come here to meet the four leaders of the myriad beast ridge. It turns out that he has such combat strength. Unfortunately, Chen Qianhe, Meng Shi, and the others were silent. Although Su Rue didn't continue, everyone could guess what he was feeling regretful about. Now, Su Zimo seemed to have the upper hand, but there were still three grand heavenly venerates who hadn't made a move yet. As long as any one of the grand heavenly venerates made a move, this battle could end early. The tiger race heavenly venerate had just been killed by Su Zimo, so the jackal race heavenly venerate wouldn't let him go. If the situation wasn't good, the jackal race heavenly venerate would definitely make a move and kill Su Zimo. Today's matter isn't fellow Taoist Su's fault, Chen Qianhe said. Who would have thought that the two grand heavenly venerates of the Black Goat Ridge would come here, and that the leader of the Myriad Beast Ridge would break through and become a grand heavenly venerate? The battle continued. Although the wolf race and leopard race heavenly venerates were at a disadvantage, they didn't panic at all. They knew that as long as they called out, the jackal race heavenly venerate would definitely make a move. As for Su Zimo, he was even calmer. The main reason why he did not use any other methods, but chose to fight the two celestial venerables head-on, was because he wanted to test what level the physical strength of the Green Lotus true body had reached after fusing with the Red Lotus of Hellfire. At this point in the battle, he already had an idea. If he continued fighting, he would be able to kill the two heavenly venerables with his physical strength alone. But he didn't want to waste any more time. There were still three Grand Empyreans watching from the side. He had just noticed that the Grand Empyrean of the Jackal race was eager to attack at any moment. Once the Grand Empyrean of the Jackal race took action, it would be much more difficult to kill the Wolf race and Leopard race Empyreans. He had to kill the Wolf clan and Leopard clan Empyrean, exalts as fast as lightning, and not give the Jackal clan Grand Empyrean a chance to react. With that thought in mind, Su Zimo's aura suddenly changed. He suddenly propped up a world, which was gray and blurry inside. Chaotic world. The chaos world descended, instantly enveloping the bodies of the Wolf clan and Leopard clan's two Empyreans. This world seemed very ordinary. There were no anomalies, no power, no light, no darkness, and no time. But after it descended, the great Tao phenomenons of the Wolf and Leopard race Empyreans let out sorrowful cries and instantly collapsed. The world of the two Empyreans was also absorbed into Su Zimo's chaos world, turning into chaos. There were too many things fused in this chaos world. Su Zimo's past cultivation of Tao and laws, phenomenons, Dharma idols, grotto heavens, divine abilities, secret techniques, everything was inside. The ultimate destination of all things was chaos. The disappearance of the two worlds meant that the Wolf and Leopard Empyreans were exposed to Su Zimo's chaos world. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me? The Jackal race Grand Empyrean's expression changed greatly when he saw this scene. The situation of the battle had taken a turn for the worse. It was already too late for him to rush up and save them. Seeing that the lives of the Wolf and Leopard race Empyreans were hanging by a thread, the Jackal race Grand Empyrean could only erupt with an Essence Soul Tao seal and attack Su Zimo. This was the fastest killing method, and it arrived in an instant. An attack aimed at the Essence Soul was enough to instantly kill a third transformation Tao manifestation supremacy. It's over. This thought flashed through the minds of everyone in the Chaos Palace when they saw this scene. Some people couldn't bear to watch and lowered their heads. In the face of the Jackal race Grand Empyrean's attack, Su Zimo's expression didn't change. He also released an Essence Soul Tao seal. Su Zimo had once mastered several Essence Soul mystic techniques. However, at his cultivation realm, these Essence Soul mystic techniques couldn't reach the Tao level and couldn't be of much use. Only by fusing these Essence Soul mystic techniques into the chaos and forming a Chaos Essence Soul Tao seal could they unleash great power. Oh! The Jackal Race Grand Empyrean's expression changed greatly. This person's Essence Soul, the level of a Grand Empyrean. Great Empyrean Xianyang also felt the terror of Su Zimo's Essence Soul Tao seal. He had a grave expression as he softly muttered. A third transformation, Tao manifestation, supremacy actually cultivated the Essence Soul of a Grand Empyrean? The golden-armored Great Empyrean gasped. Before the two of them finished speaking, the two Essence Soul Tao seals had already collided. It was silent, but it caused the surrounding void to tremble slightly. The space of the Great Thousand Realms was extremely sturdy. However, the collision of Su Zimo's Essence Soul with the Jackal Race Grand Empyrean could shake the void. Oh! The Jackal Race Grand Empyrean was about to step forward when his expression changed drastically, and he grunted. Great Empyrean Xianyang and the golden-armored Great Empyrean's hearts trembled. In this collision of Essence Soul Tao seals, the Jackal Race Grand Empyrean was at a disadvantage. He must have just broken through, and his cultivation realm is unstable. It's difficult for him to unleash the true power of a Grand Empyrean. The golden-armored Great Empyrean whispered. Great Empyrean Xianyang remained silent. He vaguely felt that things weren't that simple. In fact, that was indeed the case. The Jackal Race Grand Empyrean could clearly feel that his Essence Soul was being burned by a kind of fire power. It was extremely painful. Although it didn't hurt his foundation, it still made him break out in a cold sweat. You can't save the people I want to kill. Su Zimo glanced at the Jackal Race Grand Empyrean. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Chaos World descended and enveloped the Wolf Race and Leopard Race Grand Empyrean. Within the chaos, the two Grand Empyreans let out miserable screams before they fell silent. Their flesh and blood turned into chaos. Hundreds of thousands of demonic beasts in the myriad Beast Ridge witnessed this tragic scene. The two high and mighty leaders had been directly suppressed by an outsider in front of the Jackal Race Grand Empyrean. Not even their bones remained. What kind of power was this? Everyone in the Primal Chaos Palace was stunned when they saw this scene. Their faces were filled with shock. Even a Grand Empyrean couldn't stop Su Zimo. Good move. Mengsher couldn't help but shout. His eyes flashed with excitement, and the blood in his body seemed to become restless. This group of demonic beasts was cruel and bloodthirsty. Who knew how many living beings had been slaughtered by them? Mengsher had long hated this group of demonic beasts to the bone. When he saw this scene, he only felt incomparably delighted. Su Rue also subconsciously clenched his fists and did his best to suppress the excitement in his heart. He said, Fellow Taoist Su is decisive and doesn't leave any leeway. He wants to protect us. If he is entangled by the Jackal Race Grand Empyrean, and the Wolf Race Grand Empyrean, and the Leopard Race Grand Empyrean escape, I'm afraid he will kill us to vent his anger. Everyone in the Primal Chaos Palace nodded. Now that Su Zimo had killed 3 Grand Empyreans of the myriad Beast Ridge, all the anger of the Jackal Race Grand Empyrean would be poured onto Su Zimo. End of this chapter. Chapter 3261. The Jackal Race Grand Empyrean watched as the Wolf Race Grand Empyrean and the Leopard Race Grand Empyrean were killed by Su Zimo without being able to stop it. The anger and killing intent in his heart had reached its peak. 3 of the 4 leaders of the myriad Beast Ridge were dead. "Ant, I want you to pay with your life." The Jackal Race Grand Empyrean's blood essence surged, supporting a world and manifesting a great Tao phenomenon. In his world, the traces of Tao covered a wider and denser area. The great Tao and the world had mostly fused. This was the state of greater mastery of the Tao comprehending realm. Boom! The 2 worlds collided with each other, causing a loud explosion. Su Zimo's world kept shaking, as if it could not hold on. But soon, a beam of light bloomed in his chaos world. A green lotus soared into the sky, breaking through the layers of chaos and swaying. The chaos great Tao. Seeing this, the golden-armored Grand Empyrean exclaimed, No wonder he could suppress two Grand Empyreans in a supremacy's world. Grand Empyrean Black Goat muttered softly. The Chaos Great Tao was the most powerful of the 3,000 Great Taos, and also the most difficult to cultivate. In all these years, almost no one had tried to cultivate this Great Tao. Even if there were people who cultivated this Great Tao, they were unknown. If the Great Tao was invisible and untouchable, then the Chaos Great Tao was even more difficult. The Grand Tao of Primal Chaos was even more difficult to touch, understand, and comprehend. Among the 3,000 Great Taos, the Jackal Tao could be comprehended, as long as one cultivated it to a certain level. Moreover, due to bloodlines, soul, memories, and various other reasons, it was easier to comprehend and feel more vividly. For the Sword Tao, many sword cultivators could comprehend the Great Tao through sword techniques, Sword Tao manuals, sword intent, and sword heart. For the Water Tao, there were rivers, lakes, seas, ice, snow, and rain to help cultivators comprehend it. Whether it was the sun, moon, stars, or mountains and rivers, there were always some references. However, the Chaos Great Tao did not have any reference objects or methods of comparison. The universe had evolved to this day, and had long broken away from its chaotic state. Although the Chaos Great Tao was powerful, if one could not comprehend it, their realm would stagnate, and they would regret it for life. The golden-armored Grand Empyrean said, "This person's ambition is not small. He actually chose to cultivate the Chaos Great Tao." Humph. Great Heavenly Venerate Xianyang sneered. Let's not talk about how far this person can go on the Great Tao of Chaos. Even if he's extremely talented, he'll only be able to reach the Tao manipulation realm in his lifetime. There's absolutely no chance of him becoming a saint. Why is that? Golden-armored Great Heavenly Venerate asked. Great Heavenly Venerate Xianyang said in a low voice. I once heard a Tao Venerate mention that the stronger the Great Tao, the more dangerous it will be during the Tao integration. Since ancient times, there have been countless geniuses who couldn't withstand the backlash of the Great Tao during their Tao integration and died. And how many monstrous geniuses have stopped at the Tao control realm, not daring to take that final step in their entire lives? The golden-armored Great Heavenly Venerate nodded. With his level of cultivation, he hadn't come into contact with much information about the Tao manipulation realm. As for the Saint realm, he knew even less. In fact, the reason why Su Zimo could cultivate the Great Tao of Chaos to this level was because of the fusion of the Qinglian of creation and the Red Lotus of karmic fire, as well as the inherited memories that the two lotuses gave him. It's actually the Great Tao of Chaos. No wonder fellow Taoist Su once said that he was fated with the Chaos Palace. Su Rue and the others looked at each other and recalled what Su Zimo had said when they brought him back. The battle was still ongoing, and the scene in the air shocked the myriad beast ridge's Great Heavenly Venerates. A Tao manifestation Venerate was fighting head-on with a Great Heavenly Venerate at the peak of the Tao comprehension realm, and he wasn't at a disadvantage. Not only that, but because the Great Heavenly Venerate of the Jackal race had just broken through, and his origin soul was affected by Su Zimo's origin soul Tao seal, his combat strength had decreased. After the two fought for a while, Su Zimo firmly held the upper hand. His attacks were like a storm, completely suppressing the Great Heavenly Venerate of the Jackal race. It was only now that the people of the Chaos Palace realized why Su Zimo dared to come to the Myriad Beast Ridge. Why he was so calm and composed in the Myriad Beast's Great Hall. Why he could sit still when facing Heavenly Venerates, and even Great Heavenly Venerates. His greatest confidence was that he had the strength to contend with Great Heavenly Venerates. Even so, the hearts of the people of the Chaos Palace were still hanging high. It had to be said that there were still two Great Heavenly Venerates standing on the side. Once these two Great Heavenly Venerates made a move, they would definitely change the situation of the battle. Moreover, there were still hundreds of thousands of demonic beasts gathered around the Myriad Beast Ridge. It was only because the demonic beasts were attracted by the battle that they didn't do anything else. If the Jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate gave the order, and the demonic beasts swarmed forward, they wouldn't even need to use any methods to trample all 3,000 of them into meat paste. In truth, Great Heavenly Venerate Xianyang and Great Heavenly Venerate Golden Armor had also been secretly communicating. With the current situation, the two of them didn't need to rush into action. They could let Su Zimo and the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate fight each other. It would be best if both sides were seriously injured, and they could reap the benefits. Even if one of them won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. With their combat strength, they could easily suppress him if they worked together. Xianyang Golden Armor, are the two of you just going to stand by and watch? The jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate felt more and more pressure as he faced Su Zimo, who was getting fiercer and fiercer. He couldn't hold on any longer and shouted. Great Heavenly Venerate Xianyang smiled, but didn't say anything. He secretly thought, right now we just need to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Then we can annex the Myriad Beast Ridge, without shedding a drop of blood. Great Heavenly Venerate Golden Armor also chuckled, and had no intention of making a move. Just as the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate spoke, his aura fluctuated, and the world behind him shook. He was almost defeated by Su Zimo. The jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate realized that if the battle continued, he wouldn't be able to escape death. Thinking quickly, the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate made a decision. He gritted his teeth and said, I beg the two Great Heavenly Venerates to save me. From now on, I will follow the two Great Heavenly Venerates and never betray you. When the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate said this, it meant that he had chosen to submit to the Black Goat Ridge. There was no way he could go back on his word in front of so many people. Great Heavenly Venerate Xianyang and Great Heavenly Venerate Golden Armor looked at each other, somewhat tempted. If they could subdue a Great Heavenly Venerate, it would naturally be beneficial for the Black Goat Ridge. Moreover, this was a life-saving grace. From now on, the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate would owe them a life. To make the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate willingly submit to them, had already achieved their goal. Thinking about this, the two secretly nodded. They exchanged glances and attacked at the same time. Two Origin Soul Taoist seals shot toward Su Zimo. It was too easy for the two of them to stop the battle before them. Su Zimo had just released his Origin Soul Taoist seal, and had fought a few battles. The power of his Origin Soul most likely wouldn't be able to condense a Origin Soul Taoist seal to block their attacks. Even if Su Zimo was in peak condition, it would be difficult for his Origin Soul Taoist seal to fight against the two of them. Seeing this, Su Rue and company's hearts sank. The situation they were most worried about had still happened. Three Great Heavenly Venerates had attacked at the same time. End of this chapter. Chapter 3262. Su Rue and the other two were anxious, but they were powerless in the face of this scene. They were simply too weak. Not to mention helping Su Zimo. Just the energy from the battle between the jackal race's Grand Empyrean and Su Zimo was enough to overturn the three of them. They couldn't even get close. Mengshi clenched his fists as he suppressed the anger in his heart. He suddenly shouted, the Grand Empyrean is so shameless. He can't beat fellow Taoist Su in a one-on-one fight, so he launched a sneak attack. Su Rue and Chen Qianhe were shocked by Mengshi's words. Originally, no one had paid attention to them. However, Mengshi's words would definitely attract the attention of others. The two of them believed that Mengshi was also aware of this. The moment Mengshi opened his mouth to curse, he had already disregarded life and death. The three of them had known each other for many years. Su Rue and Chen Qianhe both knew Mengshi's character. He was straightforward and sometimes spoke harshly, but in his heart, he valued friendship. If not for this, he wouldn't have stayed in the Primal Chaos Palace until now. Aside from having a trace of hope for the Primal Chaos Palace, he was more unwilling to leave Su Rue and Chen Qianhe, and was willing to continue walking with them. At this moment, Mengshi stood out to mock the Grand Empyreans, even if he didn't care about his life. He had already decided on Su Zimo. Mengshi couldn't think of any way to help Su Zimo. However, he knew that he couldn't just watch Su Zimo fight for them and the Primal Chaos Palace alone. He had to do something. However, he was weak, so what could he do? He could only repay him with his life. Ha 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 ha. Mengshi laughed out loud with a face full of mockery. He pointed at the two Grand Empyreans and shouted, Grand Empyreans are so shameless. How embarrassing. If you know that you can't beat fellow Taoist Su, Then kneel down and kowtow 3 times to ask fellow Taoist Su to spare your lives. Mengshi didn't hold back and scolded without restraint. Grand Emperor Xian Yang and Grand Emperor in golden armor had serious expressions. They acted as if they didn't hear anything and didn't even care about Mengshi. It wasn't that the two of them didn't want to make a move. Instead, the scene just now had caused a trace of fear to emerge in both of their hearts. Their essence spirit Dao seals had clearly struck Su Zimo. However, the latter did not seem to notice it at all, as though he was not injured at all. This soul core attack was like a stone ox that fell into the sea, and it vanished without a trace within Su Zimo's body. How could this be? Both Great Heavenly Venerate Xian Yang and Great Heavenly Venerate Golden Armor were shocked. Even though he was annoyed by Mengshi's scolding, he wasn't in the mood to bother with him. Naturally, the two of them did not know that it was indeed very difficult for Su Zimo's primordial spirit to condense a Dao seal and fight against the two of them. However, his essence spirit sat on the creation lotus platform and spewed out endless green light, forming an indestructible barrier. This creation lotus platform was a top-notch numinous treasure to begin with. As Su Zimo's cultivation level increased, the defense of the lotus platform of creation also increased. Their essence spirit Dao seals could not even break through the defense formed by the creation lotus platform, so they naturally could not harm Su Zimo's essence spirit at all. During this time, Su Zimo's attacks became even fiercer. A crack had already appeared in the world of the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate. It could collapse at any moment. Hearing Mengshi's scolding, Great Heavenly Venerate Xian Yang and Great Heavenly Venerate's golden armor had no time to pay attention to him. The jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate was extremely sullen from being beaten up by Su Zimo. He was filled with anger and had nowhere to vent it. Mengshi's noisy voice rang out, finally letting him find a place to vent. Myriad beast mountain range monsters, listen to my order. The jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate suddenly screamed. Kill everyone in the primal chaos palace for me. This really pushed the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate to the extreme. This order could first make Mengshi shut up. Second, it was the method the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate had thought of to break out of this situation. If Su Zimo cared about the 3,000 people in the primal chaos palace, he could only go back and save them. This would give the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate a chance to breathe and escape. Once he adjusted his breathing and joined forces with Great Heavenly Venerate Xian Yang and Great Heavenly Venerate Golden Armor, they could kill their way back. Mengshi's shouts didn't stop. From the moment he opened his mouth, he had already thought of his own ending. Fellow Taoist Su, don't worry about us. Just kill that wolf, and we brothers can die in peace. Mengshi loudly shouted. The monsters of the Myriad Beast Mountain Range became restless under the command of the jackal race, Great Heavenly Venerate. They stared at the people of the Primal Chaos Palace with fierce gazes. Just at this moment, Su Zimo suddenly let out a roar and his voice was like thunder. Whoever dares to act rashly will end up like this. Before he finished speaking, Su Zimo's eyes suddenly changed. His left eye was pitch black, and his right eye was pure white. 2 rays of divine light shot out and intertwined in the air to form a yin and yang divine diagram that suppressed down. Boom! The world of the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate instantly collapsed. The Taiji divine diagram originated from the Tao of yin and yang. Normally speaking, Su Zimo hadn't comprehended it to the level of Tao, so he couldn't shake the world of the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate. The reason for the eruption of such power was mostly because of the 2 divine stones in Su Zimo's eyes, the torch illumination and serene glow. After ascending to the greater thousand world, Su Zimo could clearly sense that the 2 divine stones, illumination and nether glow, were gradually transforming. These 2 godstones were actually growing as his cultivation base increased. He didn't even need to consciously activate them. The 2 divine stones could cultivate on their own and absorb the Genesis Chi around the Great Thousand World. To be more precise, the cultivation of these 2 divine stones wasn't weaker than his. It was because of this that the Taiji divine diagram was able to destroy the world of the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate. After losing the protection of the world, Su Zimo broke through the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate's defenses with one punch. His palm descended from the sky and slammed into the top of the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate's head. After being forced into close combat, how could the jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate be Su Zimo's match? His head was crushed by Su Zimo's palm almost instantly. Blood mixed with brain matter splattered everywhere. It was a ghastly sight. The jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate's Yuan spirit was destroyed, and his headless corpse powerlessly fell from the sky. The entire process seemed slow, but it actually happened in an instant. This was the fate of anyone who dared to act rashly. The jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate's corpse fell at almost the same time as the last word of the sentence. Plop. The jackal race Great Heavenly Venerate's corpse fell into the ruins of the Thousand Beast Great Hall, kicking up endless dust. It was like a heavy blow to the hearts of the Thousand Beasts' great army. The bodies of the beast horde uncontrollably trembled. Dead. The 4 leaders of the Thousand Beast Ridge, 3 Heavenly Venerates and 1 Great Heavenly Venerate, had all been killed by the azure-robed man in the air. Moreover, he had killed them with his bare hands. The hundreds of thousands of beast horde that were originally raring to go and filled with killing intent instantly quieted down. The beast horde was completely silent as they looked at the godlike figure in the air. Their faces were filled with fear, and they were as silent as cicadas in winter. Who dared to act rashly? Many thanks to Tiangu Hongmeng for the 15,000 book coins tip. Many thanks to Shengguan Yulin, Daxishui, and the other book friends for the tips. Recently, my condition has been very hot. When Ru has been on the verge of peeing and can't be stopped. Good night, everyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 3263. This scene intimidated the group of demonic beasts. No one dared to act rashly. Even the people of the Chaos Palace were shocked and in disbelief. It was one thing to kill 2 heavenly venerates, but now, even a Grand Empyrean had been suppressed by Su Zimo and died on the spot. When the demonic beasts surged forward, everyone thought that they were going to die today. Now the hundreds of thousands of demonic beasts were all trembling. No one dared to take a step forward. Although today's matter had yet to come to an end, the myriad beast ridge only existed in name now. Grand Empyrean Xian Yang and Grand Empyrean Golden Armor also frowned. The development of the situation seemed to be somewhat out of their control. However, the myriad beast ridge was leaderless and had 9 source minds. They were unwilling to turn around and leave. Thinking of this, Grand Empyrean Golden Armor roared and circulated his blood chi to attack Su Zimo. Grand Empyrean Xian Yang also raised a world and didn't dare to hold back. He summoned his great Tao phenomenon and charged over from the side. No matter what, Su Zimo had just fought a series of battles and had expended a lot of energy. Now was the best opportunity. If they waited for him to recuperate and recover, the 2 of them might not be able to gain an advantage, even if they joined forces again. However, the 2 of them didn't know that Su Zimo had Qinglian's true body and hadn't even used his blood chi in the series of battles. At most, it could only be considered a warm-up. He wanted to test the strength of the 3 heavenly venerates and 1 Grand Empyrean, and compare it with his own combat strength. In the series of battles just now, Su Zimo was almost unaffected except for the power of his origin spirit being consumed. After circulating his bloodline once, he had recovered to his original state. In terms of endurance, even Wu Dao's true body couldn't compare to his Qinglian's true body. Facing the attacks of the 2 Grand Empyreans, Su Zimo didn't retreat. Instead, he took the initiative to meet them. He used his Chaos World to contend with the great Tao phenomenons of the 2 Grand Empyreans. Boom, boom, boom. 3 shadows crossed in the air. The collision between the worlds was deafening, causing the earth to shake and the clouds to change color. After fighting for a while, Grand Empyreans Xian Yang and Golden Armor became more alarmed. No matter how the 2 of them cooperated and launched fierce attacks, it was difficult to suppress Su Zimo's momentum. On the contrary, Su Zimo became more and more courageous the more he fought. Every punch and kick contained a shocking amount of divine power. His breath was long and continuous, and his stamina was bottomless. It was as if there was no end to it. This person didn't have any divine weapons or spirit treasures. He was just using his bare hands to deal with their attacks. Even so, the two of them were unable to seriously injure him. When their Empyrean spirit treasures struck this person's fist, they only lightly scratched his skin. This kind of superficial wound could be healed in an instant, and would not affect him in the slightest. Fortunately, this person is a human with an ordinary bloodline. The golden-armored great heavenly venerate secretly rejoiced. In his opinion, the only explanation for Su Zimo not releasing his chi and blood was that his bloodline was too ordinary. Even if he released it, it would not increase his combat strength. Moreover, the human race was naturally weak, and was at the bottom of the 10,000 races. This was something that everyone knew. Merely, I wonder how that man managed to cultivate his physical body to such a level. It's actually so powerful. The golden-armored great heavenly venerate thought to himself. Could it be a transformation brought about by cultivating the Chaos Tao and condensing the Chaos Tao seal? Beside him, great heavenly venerate Xianyang had another thought. Fortunately, this person comes from the Chaos Palace and doesn't have any suitable weapons. Great heavenly venerate Xianyang secretly felt lucky. If he had a divine weapon, I'm afraid that even if the two of us joined forces, we wouldn't be able to stop him. The two of them couldn't defeat Su Zimo after attacking for a long time, and gradually wanted to retreat. If they continued fighting like this, even if Su Zimo didn't suppress them, they would die of exhaustion. Retreat! The two of them exchanged glances, and instantly understood each other's intentions. Boom! The two of them exerted their strength at the same time, and pushed their chi and blood to the limit. They once again clashed head-on with Su Zimo, and used the momentum to retreat, and widen the distance between them. The golden-armored great heavenly venerate laughed loudly and said, "Fellow Taoist Su, you're really good. I've learned a lot today. The myriad beast ridge belongs to you. We'll meet again in the future." Seeing this, everyone from the Chaos Palace was invigorated and overjoyed. The two great heavenly venerates of the Black Goat Ridge had chosen to leave. This meant that the Chaos Palace would take over the Myriad Beast Ridge and become the biggest winner. The 9 source mines of the Myriad Beast Ridge would all belong to them. Before this, the people of the Chaos Palace had been wandering all over the place and living in a state of constant fear. They didn't even dare to think about such an outcome. Su Rui and the other two looked at each other all excited. Chen Qianhe's eyes were even a little red. The most important decision they had made in their lives was to bring Su Zimo back from the Immortal Ascension altar. When the Myriad Beast Ridge's great heavenly venerates saw that the two great heavenly venerates of the Black Goat Ridge were leaving this place, they didn't dare to stay any longer, and started to flee in all directions. No one knew what kind of temperament Su Zimo, who had taken over the Myriad Beast Ridge, had. However, after seeing how decisive he was, and how he killed the 4 leaders of the Myriad Beast Ridge, the Myriad Beast Ridge's great heavenly venerates didn't dare to continue staying in the Myriad Beast Ridge. Furthermore, the Myriad Beast Ridge's great heavenly venerates didn't want to submit to a human, much less be suppressed by a bunch of plant life forms. "Who allowed you to leave?" Just at this moment, a voice came from the sky. The fleeing Myriad Beast Ridge's great heavenly venerates trembled in fear. Some of the Myriad Beast Ridge's great heavenly venerates went soft, and almost fell to the ground. The Myriad Beast Ridge's great heavenly venerates all turned around, and saw the figure in the sky looking at the two great heavenly venerates of the Black Goat Ridge. Only then did they realize that those words weren't directed at them. The Myriad Beast Ridge's great heavenly venerates didn't dare to stay any longer, and frantically fled into the distance. The people of the Chaos Palace were shocked when they heard this. The two great heavenly venerates of the Black Goat Ridge already wanted to leave, but it seemed like Su Zimo didn't want them to leave so easily. Fellow Taoist Su is too domineering. Chen Qianhe still wasn't used to it. All these years, they had been bullied and chased by many factions. When had they ever been so unyielding? I quite like it. Mengsher chuckled and rubbed his palms together. His eyes were filled with excitement. Su Rui's expression was calm as he said, "Although that's the case, if the two great heavenly venerates are determined to leave, it will be difficult for fellow Taoist Su to stop them. The battle between the 3 of them just now was witnessed by everyone. The two great heavenly venerates of the Black Goat Ridge might not be able to suppress Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo didn't seem to have the absolute upper hand. What? You want to stop us by yourself? Great heavenly venerate Xianyang was shocked when he heard this. He thought that Su Zimo had some helpers lying in ambush, so he probed. It's enough, Su Zimo said indifferently. Humph. Great heavenly venerate Xianyang's skinny face instantly darkened as he slowly said, Su Zimo, since you won a yard after taking an inch, don't blame us for being ruthless in the future. If it was just Su Zimo alone, Great heavenly venerate Xianyang was certain that he wouldn't be able to stop the two of them. After saying that, the two of them turned and left. At that moment, Su Zimo's divine sense moved, and two sword lights broke through the chaos in the world and arrived beside him. End of this chapter. Chapter 3264. One of the swords was covered in azure light and emitted a chilling aura. It was the endless pain sword formed by the fusion of the Qinglian sword and the Avicii Great Hell. The other sword was dark red, as if it was soaked in blood and burning with flames. It was filled with killing intent that shook one's soul. It was the Netherworld sword formed by the fusion of the Red Lotus sword and the Netherworld Sea of Blood. The moment these two swords appeared, they attracted countless gazes. But soon, everyone lowered their heads and closed their eyes. With just one glance, everyone felt a stabbing pain in their eyes. It was as if their minds were about to be taken away, and they trembled with fear. The two Grand Empyreans, Xianyang in golden armor, looked back and sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. The two of them could smell an extremely dangerous aura from those two swords. The two of them originally wanted to retreat, but after seeing the Endless Pain sword and the Netherworld sword, their movement techniques soared. They completely disregarded their status and dignity and fled for their lives. After the battle just now, Su Zimo already had a rough understanding of his own combat strength. If he wanted to keep the two Grand Empyreans here, he should be able to release his blood essence and bloodline phenomenon. However, he had just ascended to the Great Thousand World and didn't understand the situation of the Great Thousand World. The surrounding environment was also unclear, so it wasn't good to expose the Qinglian bloodline too early. In the battle just now, he did not even use the Tai Horsetail Whisk, the three treasures Jade Rui Scepter, or the Red Lotus of Hellfire that he had obtained after merging with the Red Lotus of Hellfire, which could expose his Green Lotus true body. The Endless Pain sword and the Netherworld sword had changed their auras after being reforged, so others couldn't recognize them. He hadn't used these two swords since obtaining them. Su Zimo also wanted to test the power of these two swords. Go! Looking at the backs of Xianyang in golden armor, the two Grand Heavenly Venerates, who were fleeing, Su Zimo pointed forward and shouted. Whoosh! The two swords turned into two streaks of sword light, one green and one red. They instantly disappeared and chased after the two Grand Empyreans. Their speed was astonishing. The two Grand Empyreans were clearly one step ahead, and had already fled thousands of miles away. But the Endless Pain sword and Netherworld sword had already closed in on them in the blink of an eye. It was too fast. When the golden-armored Great Heavenly Venerate saw that he couldn't dodge, he hurriedly propped up a world and manifested a great Tao phenomenon. He spurred his blood energy, and his body bloomed with golden light, covering him in a thick layer of golden armor. At the same time, he held his long saber and slashed at the Avicii sword that was thrusting towards him. Clang! The Avicii sword did not even try to block it, but when his long saber landed on the tip of the Avicii sword, it broke into two. Puff! Puff! The Infinite Pain sword pierced straight in. The numerous great Tao phenomena were like paper before the edge of the Avicii sword, and all of them were pierced through. Even the golden-armored Great Heavenly Venerate's world couldn't stop the sharpness of the Avicii sword. The black-robed man had once told Su Zimo that the sharpness of the Avicii sword was the best. Now that he had seen him, he was indeed worthy of this evaluation. The golden-armored Great Heavenly Venerate was horrified. He could only watch helplessly as the Avicii sword pierced his chest. In front of this long sword, all of his methods seemed to be unable to withstand a single blow. Fear and despair. However, at the same time, the golden-armored great heavenly venerate rejoiced. It seemed like Su Zimo didn't want to kill him. Otherwise, this sword wouldn't have pierced his chest. Instead, it would have pierced his head and destroyed his origin spirit. Just as he had this thought, the Avicii sword instantly pierced through the thick, golden armor on his chest, and came out of his body, bringing with it a stream of blood. The golden-armored great heavenly venerate shuddered, and his expression stiffened. Then his eyes dimmed rapidly, and he lost all signs of life. A great heavenly venerate had his chest pierced by the Avicii sword and died on the spot. Su Zimo frowned secretly when he noticed this. The golden-armored great heavenly venerate had guessed correctly. He really hadn't planned on killing the two great heavenly venerates of the Black Goat Ridge. After stepping into the Myriad Beast Ridge, and seeing the forest of bones and blood-stained ground, he had no intention of letting the four leaders of this place off. However, his intention was to subdue the two great heavenly venerates of the Black Goat Ridge, and use them for himself. Or rather, to be used by the Primal Chaos Palace. The Primal Chaos Palace only had a little over 3,000 people. Aside from him, there were only 3 supremacies. Their strength was too weak, and their foundation was too weak. Even if they occupied the Myriad Beast Ridge and the Black Goat Ridge, they might not be able to guard the dozen or so source minds of the two factions. If he could subdue the two great heavenly venerates, it would be equivalent to controlling the Black Goat Ridge. At the very least, it would help the Primal Chaos Palace gain a foothold here. Therefore, Su Zimo had only pierced the golden-armored great heavenly venerate's chest. He wanted to spare his life and teach him a lesson to subdue him. However, Su Zimo had still underestimated the terror of the Avicii sword. The Avicii sword had fused with the Avicii hell and pierced the golden-armored great heavenly venerate. Although it wasn't fatal, the Avicii hell within the sword had directly swallowed the golden-armored great heavenly venerate's origin spirit and dragged it into the Avicii hell. It had to be said that the Avicii hell had fused with the Qinglian sword, and its power had increased greatly after being recast. Back then, the primordial spirit of the Flame Sky Emperor and the Lord of Hell had been imprisoned in the Avicii hell. They hadn't died because they had reached the Saint Realm and could live forever. However, how could the origin spirit of the golden-armored great heavenly venerate have such power? After being devoured by the Avicii Great Hell, they were instantly killed by the power within, their souls scattered. Sensing this change, Su Zimo hurriedly looked to the other side. Under the sharpness of the Netherworld sword, great heavenly venerate Xian Yang's many techniques simply couldn't withstand it, and were easily defeated. Su Zimo quickly controlled the Netherworld sword. Just as the tip of the sword was about to pierce through Grand Empyrean Xian Yang's chest, it suddenly stopped. Great Empyrean Xian Yang's face was deathly pale as he looked down at the blood-colored sword in front of his chest. His scalp tingled, and he was so frightened that his liver and guts were about to burst. The Netherworld sword stopped, and the sword chi only cut through his clothes. On his chest there was a small wound, but it was not fatal. Just as Great Empyrean Xian Yang was about to let out a sigh of relief, his eyes suddenly widened. His eyes were bloodshot, and his face was filled with shock. An incomparably terrifying killing intent passed through the small wound on his chest and rushed into his sea of consciousness, strangling his origin spirit. Great Empyrean Xian Yang's origin spirit was extinguished. His head tilted and he died on the spot. 2 Great Empyreans had died without a single exception. Su Zimo looked at this scene in a daze as he recalled the black-robed man's words. The Netherworld sword, #1 in killing. He never thought that just a small wound would take Great Empyrean Xian Yang's life. This was indeed the #1 in killing. When Su Rue and the other 2 saw this scene, they were first stunned before they burst into cheers. Who would have thought that 2 Great Empyreans would be killed so easily and cleanly by Su Zimo? The 3 of them had excited expressions as they ran to Su Zimo's side. Just as they were about to speak, Su Zimo sighed softly and muttered, "Sigh, I failed." "Ha!" The 3 of them opened their mouths wide and widened their eyes as they looked at the vexed Su Zimo. Their minds were in chaos and they were speechless. End of chapter. Chapter 3265. Su Rue and the other 2 were stunned. What did he mean by failed? How were they supposed to respond? The three of them wanted to celebrate, but Su Zimo seemed to be regretful. Su Zimo recalled the Avicii and Netherworld swords with a thought. These two swords are too powerful. I have to be careful in the future. Su Zimo thought to himself. Moreover, when he summoned the Avicii and Netherworld swords, they seemed to be excited and even showed signs of being out of his control. If not for that, the Netherworld sword might not have been able to pierce great heavenly venerate Black Goat's skin. Fellow Taoist Su, you don't seem to want to kill those two great heavenly venerates? Chen Qianhe probed. Su Zimo nodded and did not hide anything. My original intention was to subdue them and use them to control the Black Goat Ridge for the Chaos Palace's use. From the looks of it now, with their deaths, the Dark Goat Ridge may be in a state of chaos. It will be difficult to occupy the Dark Goat Ridge. With his battle strength, he could naturally dominate the Black Goat Ridge. However, the Chaos Palace only had around 3,000 people, and most of them were weak. Even if they occupied the Black Goat Ridge, they would not be able to defend such a large territory. Su Zimo's main goal after ascending to the Great Thousand World was to raise his cultivation as soon as possible and strengthen himself. He could not fight for source ores with the Great Thousand World's demons. Fellow Taoist Su, even if you spared the lives of the two great heavenly venerates, they would not submit willingly. Su Rue said in a low voice. For more than 6 billion years, the powerhouses of the various races have been domineering in the southeastern territory. How could they be willing to submit to others? If we keep them by our side, they might betray us at any time and become a huge hidden danger. Chen Qianhe nodded and said, You have already killed the 4 leaders of the 10,000 Beast Ridge, but the other beasts did not choose to stay. Instead they scattered. They don't agree with us from the bottom of their hearts. Meng Shi was even more extreme as he said hatefully, Over the years, the various races have committed many crimes in the southeastern territory. Their crimes are unforgivable. It's better to kill them. Su Zimo was silent. It seemed that even if he left these monster beasts behind, it would be difficult for them to get along with the people of the Primal Chaos Palace. In the future, it was inevitable that there would be conflicts. Thinking up to this point, Su Zimo had no intention of stopping the demonic beasts that were fleeing in all directions. He saw a person mixed in with the crowd of demons, trying to take advantage of the chaos to escape. However, he could not let him leave. Su Zimo shifted his gaze onto the fleeing cultivator. He suddenly reached out his hand and grabbed the cultivator across space before tossing him to the ground. This person's face was pale and filled with fear. He was Pan Mu, who had betrayed Primal Chaos Palace. It wasn't until the 10,000 Beast Ridge and the Black Goat Ridge's Grand Empyreans and Grand Empyreans had died that he finally understood why Su Zimo had brought him to the 10,000 Beast Ridge and even threatened to kill him. Traitor! Meng Shi spat and cursed. Su Zimo looked at Su Rue and asked, Are there any rules in the Primal Chaos Palace? What kind of punishment do they have for such people? Although he had saved the people of the Primal Chaos Palace, and his combat strength was the best, he was still not the Primal Chaos Palace master in name. It was best to leave this matter to Su Rue. Su Rue cupped his hands and replied, According to the ancestors, the rules of the Primal Chaos Sacred Land were very loose and benevolent. There were no strict restrictions on the beings of the Primal Chaos Palace, and they were free to come and go. Even if the Primal Chaos Sacred Land was in danger, and someone chose to leave, the Primal Chaos Sacred Land would not punish them. However, they would not be able to return to the Sacred Land in the future. Su Zimo nodded slightly. It seemed that the Primal Chaos Sacred Land was indeed benevolent. The plant race did not have a strong murderous nature. This was understandable. Even in the minor Thousand Realms and middle Thousand Realms, there were not many such loose and benevolent rules. Su Rue continued. However, Pan Mu's actions were not just to escape from the Primal Chaos Palace. He joined other forces and turned against the Primal Chaos Palace. This is intolerable. Even if Pan Mu did not want to stay in the Primal Chaos Palace and did not want to advance or retreat with the Primal Chaos Palace, the rules of the Primal Chaos Palace would not punish him. However, He helped an outsider to deal with the Primal Chaos Palace. This touched the bottom line of the Primal Chaos Palace. Just now, in the Myriad Beasts' Great Hall, Pan Mu wanted to borrow the Myriad Beasts' Ridge and the Black Goat Ridge to destroy the Primal Chaos Palace. This was an unforgivable crime. Palace Master, please give the order. At this moment, Su Rui suddenly turned around and bowed to Su Zimo. Chen Qianhe and Ming Shi also bowed. The three of them seemed to have discussed this beforehand. I just descended. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. Palace Master, you saved the Primal Chaos Palace. You are our benefactor. Moreover, you cultivate the Grand Tao of Primal Chaos. You definitely have the qualifications to become the master of the Primal Chaos Palace. Please do not decline. Su Rui said in a deep voice. Chen Qianhe also said, Palace Master, just agree and help the Primal Chaos Palace. All these years, the Primal Chaos Palace has never had a true Palace Master. It has been led by us brothers. Ming Shi said, From today onwards Ming Shi will only submit to you. Seeing this, the people of the Primal Chaos Palace also bowed to Su Zimo, with a trace of anticipation in their eyes. They saw a glimmer of hope in Su Zimo. Perhaps, the glory of the Primal Chaos Sacred Land would truly reappear one day. Furthermore, although the current Primal Chaos Palace could take root in the Myriad Beast Ridge, it was impossible to establish a foothold with just 3,000 of them. The only way for the Primal Chaos Palace to survive was to leave Su Zimo behind. Alright. On second thought, Su Zimo agreed to it. He had already fused with the Creation Qinglian and the Red Karmic Fire Lotus. He was already half a Chaos Qinglian and was closely related to the Primal Chaos Sacred Land. There was no need for him to decline. Apart from him, there was probably no one else who had the qualifications to lead the Primal Chaos Palace. Alright. Meng Shi was all smiles and shouted excitedly when he saw Su Zimo agree. All these years, they had never been so happy and elated as they were today. Just a day ago, the Primal Chaos Palace was still lifeless, and everyone was gone. But now, every single cultivator of the Primal Chaos Palace was filled with smiles from the bottom of their hearts and exuded vitality. None of this had anything to do with Pan Mu. Pan Mu looked at these familiar faces and the smiles of his old friends. He could not help but recall the days when he cultivated and escaped with everyone. Although those days were tough and dangerous, everyone gathered together and shared joy and sorrow. They advanced and retreated together, guarding the last hope of the Primal Chaos Palace and finding joy in the midst of hardship. Pan Mu suddenly realized that those days and the people in front of him had long been deeply engraved in his mind and occupied an irreplaceable position. Endless regret and guilt rose from the depths of his heart. Originally, I should have been one of you, Pan Mu murmured softly. Before he finished his sentence, Pan Mu's body trembled, and the light in his eyes gradually dissipated. He looked at Su Rui and the others and finally revealed a smile as he stammered, Everyone take care. Pan Mu fell to the ground and committed suicide. End of chapter. Chapter 3266. Everyone in the Chaos Palace sighed when they saw Pan Mu commit suicide. Su Rui and the other two buried Pan Mu under the Myriad Beasts Ridge. Then, they cleaned up the battlefield and released all the creatures imprisoned by the Myriad Beasts Ridge. Most of them were plant life forms, and some of them were the weaker races among the 10,000 races. There were tens of thousands of captives in total. After being freed and regaining their freedom, most of them were willing to stay in the Chaos Palace, but a small number chose to leave. The people in the Chaos Palace didn't stop them. However, these prisoners were too weak and couldn't increase the Chaos Palace's strength by much. Although the Myriad Beasts' Great Hall had collapsed and was now in ruins, there were still many palaces and caverns on the Myriad Beasts Ridge. They were far better than the grass huts the Chaos Palace had casually built. These palaces and caverns were more than enough for each person. Su Rui came to Su Zimo's side and said in a low voice, Palace Lord, the Myriad Beasts Ridge is extremely large, and the 9 origin mines are scattered all over the place. We don't have enough people right now, and I'm afraid we won't be able to guard so many origin mines. Although Su Zimo was strong, He couldn't split himself up and patrol the 9 origin mines every day. That way, he wouldn't have time to cultivate either. Su Rui continued. I suggest we choose to guard 1 origin mine, or at most 2. Even if something unexpected happens, the palace lord will be able to take action in time. Chen Qianhe added. Also, there aren't many experts in the Chaos Palace who need origin stones to cultivate. 2 origin mines are enough. Only after reaching the World Realm, or the Dao Manifestation Realm, would one begin to use origin stones to cultivate. The Chaos Palace had less than 100 cultivators in these 2 realms. But giving up 7 origin mines is too much of a pity, Mengshi said with some regret. Also, the palace lord became famous after that battle. There should be more plant creatures coming to join us. As more and more people come, the cultivation resources in 2 origin mines won't be enough. Su Rui said. When the Chaos Palace grows stronger, we'll have more emperors and exalts. With the palace lord overseeing things, we'll be able to take back those origin mines. There's no need. Su Zimo waved his hand. Come to my caverns in an hour. I have my own arrangements. In the 10,000 Beasts Ridge, Su Zimo casually found a cave abode. Su Zimo used his divine sense to set up a barrier around him to prevent others from probing. Then he took out the Tai Horsetail Whisk and activated the 2 divine stones, Candlelight and Serene Glow. Tai was the brush, and Yin and Yang were the ink. 6 Ding and 6 Jia of the book. All gods and ghosts shall disperse. Su Zimo held the Tai Horsetail Whisk in his hand and wrote 12 mysterious runes in the air, summoning the 12 Luding gods. The power of the Luding Liujia god came from the Zhuzhao and Yueying godstones. After Su Zimo ascended to the Great Thousand World, the 2 divine stones were also growing and transforming. It was precisely because of this that the Luding Liujia Shun's strength also increased. They touched the level of the Tao, and were comparable to Su Zimo's essence soul realm. This meant that the current Luding Lu Jiaxin was comparable to a Grand Empyrean in terms of power. Of course, the Luding Liu Jiaxin didn't have an essence soul, flesh, or a world. In terms of actual combat power, they were inferior to a Grand Empyrean. But against an ordinary Empyrean, they had a high chance of winning. To use this secret technique, one had to use the Tai Horsetail Whisk. There were too many people outside, and now that they were in the Great Thousand World, Su Zimo was worried about being recognized. So he returned to the cave abode and summoned the Luding Liu Jiaxin. 1 hour later, Su Rui's group of 3 came to Su Zimo's cave abode with a trace of doubt. After entering the cave abode, the 3 of them saw Su Zimo sitting in the lotus position. Behind him stood 12 terrifying experts with cold expressions, 6 men and 6 women, and the aura they emitted seemed to have reached the level of a Grand Empyrean. This, Su Rui's group of 3 was shocked. Where did 12 Grand Empyreans come from? Even the 10,000 Beasts Ridge and the Black Goat Ridge combined didn't have so many Grand Empyreans. Moreover, these 12 Grand Empyreans were expressionless, and their eyes were cold. The 3 of them felt their scalps tingle, and their hearts tremble in fear. The 12 Grand Empyreans stood behind Su Zimo. Their positions were very particular, as if there was some kind of formation that could protect Su Zimo at any time. Palace Master, this is... Su Rui couldn't help but ask. These 12 people aren't true Grand Empyreans, but they should be enough to deal with Empyrean experts. Su Zimo said. 9 of them will guard the 9 source ores in the 10,000 Beasts Ridge. The other 3 will follow you and occupy the 3 source ores in the Black Goat Ridge. Of course, there were more than 3 source ores in the Black Goat Ridge. But so far, with the help of the Luding Liu Jiaxin, they could only guard 12 source ores at most. Not to mention, to the Primal Chaos Palace, the biggest source ores were actually Su Zimo himself. Even if the 12 source ores were added together, they were far from Su Zimo's. Su Rui's group of 3 still hadn't realized this point. The 3 of them saw that the Primal Chaos Palace had another 12 Dao comprehending realm experts. Even if they were only Empyreans, they were still too important to the Primal Chaos Palace. Su Rui's group of 3 looked at each other overjoyed. The Luding Liu Jiaxin were different from ordinary summoned creatures. These 12 Empyrean gods had a trace of their past memories. In battle, Su Zimo didn't even need to consciously control them. The Luding Liujiashun would rely on their memories to fight on their own. Moreover, their cooperation was extremely good. It was the same now. As long as Su Zimo left them with a consciousness to guard the source ores, the 12 Empyrean gods would deal with it on their own. Su Zimo didn't need to bother with them. In this way, Su Zimo could also enter seclusion to cultivate and break through to the Tao comprehending realm. After ascending and releasing all the power he had accumulated in the middle world, his cultivation had reached the peak of the third transformation of the Tao manifestation realm. He only needed an opportunity to break through to the Tao comprehending realm. Of course, this opportunity could come early or late. In fact, some Tao manifestation sovereigns were unable to comprehend their own great Tao, and take this step even after exhausting their lifespan. After the primal chaos palace settled down in the Thousand Beast Ridge, Su Zimo focused his mind and entered his first seclusion since ascending to the Great Thousand World. To him, the most important thing was to raise his cultivation level, whether it was to lead the primal chaos palace to rise or to find Daiyu in the future. He needed to be strong enough. If he wasn't strong enough, let alone find Daiyu, he wouldn't even be able to leave the Huagai continent. The Thousand Beast Ridge was originally filled with corpses and flesh. It was barren and lifeless. In fact, such a cultivation environment wasn't suitable for vegetation. But after Su Zimo took over, endless Genesis Qi gathered towards the Thousand Beast Ridge. The Thousand Beast Ridge was like a giant whirlpool, crazily absorbing the Genesis Qi between heaven and earth. It was like a whale swallowing cows. Everyone in the Primal Chaos Palace had long sensed that the center of the giant whirlpool was Su Zimo's cave dwelling. End of chapter. Chapter 3267. 10 years later, Canopy State. Among the 108 states in the southeastern region, the Five Venoms Palace was the largest faction in the Canopy State. It was also the only first-grade faction in the Canopy State. There were thousands of second-grade factions under the Five Venoms Palace, each dominating a region. As for the third-grade forces, there were countless of them. Only with a Tao-comprehending realm expert could a faction be called a second-grade faction. Among the second-grade factions, there were strong ones and weak ones. Factions like the Myriad Beast Ridge, which originally only had 4 heavenly venerables, could only be considered weak among the second-grade factions. A faction with a supreme heavenly venerate was the true overlord among the second-grade factions. Flood Dragon Island was one of them. The Lord of Flood Dragon Island was from the Flood Dragon race. His body and bloodline were powerful, and he was also at the perfected Tao-comprehending realm. He was famous among the supreme heavenly venerables. Countless supreme heavenly venerables had died in his hands, and he rarely lost to anyone of the same level. It was rumored that the Lord of Flood Dragon Island had a mysterious treasure that could devour treasures and restrain powerful enemies. Someone had seen with their own eyes a supreme heavenly venerate suddenly disappear during a battle with the Lord of Flood Dragon Island. That supreme heavenly venerate seemed to have been erased from this world without leaving a trace. Because of that, although Flood Dragon Island only had one supreme heavenly venerate, the other second-grade factions with supreme heavenly venerables were not willing to provoke them. On this day, the Lord of Flood Dragon Island woke up from his seclusion with a trace of irritation between his brows. A Tao-comprehending realm cultivator's lifespan could reach 1 billion years, and he was already 800 million years old. He had stayed in the Tao-comprehending realm for 500 million years. For a Tao-comprehending realm supreme heavenly venerate with a lifespan of 1 billion years, 800 million years, was already the beginning of his peak. As time passed and he grew older, all aspects of his body, including his essence, energy and spirit, would decline. It would also become more and more difficult to break through. If he could not take another step forward and step into the Tao-controlling realm, he would probably be stuck at the perfected Tao-comprehending realm for the rest of his life. One had to know that once one stepped into the Tao-controlling realm, they would have a lifespan of 10 billion years. Compared to the 1 billion years of the Tao-comprehending realm, it was 10 times more. The Lord of Flood Dragon Island was indignant. Ever since he had obtained that nameless treasure map back then, he was almost invincible among those of the same realm. However, even after studying this treasure map for many years, he still could not figure it out and did not gain anything. Its only use was to set up traps with the help of this nameless treasure map and kill powerful enemies with a surprise attack. The Flood Dragon Island Master arrived at the main hall. At this moment, both sides of the hall were filled with people. The weakest among them was an Exalt, while the rest were Empyrean Exalts and Grand Empyreans. Congratulations to Royal Father for coming out of seclusion. You'll shine with the sun and the moon, and you'll live forever. In the Jiao Dragon Palace, the descendants of the Jiao Dragon Island Lord were the first to step forward. They knelt down and congratulated him loudly. Congratulations to the Island Master for coming out of seclusion. The sun and the moon shine together, and you will live forever. Soon after, the Supremacies, Empyreans, and Grand Empyreans all knelt on the ground. They were all experts of the Jiao Dragon Island, who had come to celebrate the Jiao Dragon Island Lord's 800 million year birthday. Get up! The Lord of Serpent Island nodded slightly and said absent-mindedly, "Is there something on Father's mind?" Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying, the fourth son of Island Lord Jiao Long, stepped forward and asked when he saw that Island Lord Jiao Long had a lot on his mind. Immortality, immortality, huh? The Jiao Dragon Island Lord chuckled and shook his head. It's not that easy to live forever. Father, you are in your prime. You will definitely be able to step into the Dao manipulation realm and become a Dao Exalt. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu, the eighth son of the Jiao Dragon Island Lord, quickly said. The Jiao Dragon Island Lord smiled and shook his head without saying anything. He had many sons. His fourth and eighth sons were the most talented and outstanding among the many dragon sons. The two of them had been fighting openly and secretly for many years, and the Jiao Dragon Island Lord had turned a blind eye to it. After all, the two of them had to do everything they could to curry favor with him in the end. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu suddenly said, "Father, I've heard of something in recent years. Perhaps it's an opportunity given to you by the heavens that can help you enter the Dao manipulation realm." Oh, the Jiao Dragon Island Lord's dragon whiskers moved, showing a hint of interest. In his opinion, he didn't want to miss any opportunity that might allow him to step into the Dao control realm. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu kept him in suspense and asked, "Father, have you heard of the Chaos Palace?" The Jiao Dragon Island Lord frowned slightly and said, "Is the Chaos Palace still around?" It's said that when the Chaos Sacred Land was destroyed, it was established by a group of slaves in exile. I thought it was destroyed long ago. Father, you are wise. No matter what the Jiao Dragon Island Lord said, Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu flattered him first before continuing. The Chaos Palace is indeed on the verge of destruction, but 10 years ago, the Chaos Palace gave birth to a palace master. It's said that he's an ascender from a medium-class realm. This new Chaos Palace master first destroyed the Black Rat sect, then killed 3 heavenly venerates, 3 great heavenly venerates, and 2 great heavenly venerates of the Black Goat Ridge. After that battle, the Chaos Palace took over the Myriad Beast Ridge, and now occupies 12 source mines. They've become famous in recent years. I've also heard of this. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying also said. Haha, Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu said with a mocking expression. What else do you know, fourth brother? Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying remained silent. The Jiao Dragon Island Lord asked, "What race is this ascender? What's his cultivation level?" Father, you are wise and powerful. You hit the nail on the head. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu praised again. This Chaos Palace Master is a human. His bloodline is ordinary, and his cultivation level is only at the 3rd transformation of the Dao manifestation realm. Oh, the Jiao Dragon Island Lord heard something strange and asked. A supremacy at the 3rd transformation of the Dao manifestation realm killed 3 heavenly venerates and 3 great heavenly venerates. Yes, Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu nodded. Why? The Jiao Dragon Island Lord asked immediately. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu said, "As far as I know, this Chaos Palace Master has 2 treasured swords. They're invincible, and even great heavenly venerates can't block them. They're definitely not ordinary. 2 swords. The Jiao Dragon Island Lord muttered softly, feeling slightly disappointed. If it was just a divine weapon, it might not be of much help to him in his breakthrough. However, according to what Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu said, these 2 swords were indeed rare treasures. A Tao manifestation supremacy could kill a Great Heavenly Venerate with them. If it fell into his hands, what kind of power would it unleash? What's the current strength of the Chaos Palace? The Jiao Dragon Island Lord asked. Father, Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu said in a deep voice. I've already investigated. The Chaos Palace currently has 12 Great Heavenly Venerates overseeing it. However, these 12 Great Heavenly Venerates aren't strong enough and aren't much of a threat. The only troublesome one is the Chaos Palace Master. It's said that other Great Heavenly Venerates tried to seize the Chaos Palace's source but failed. Instead, they died in the Chaos Palace. As Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu spoke, he observed the Jiao Dragon Island Lord's expression. Seeing that the latter was interested, he continued. As long as Father permits, I'll lead an army from the island to the Chaos Palace. Today, I'll be able to bring those 2 treasured swords back to Father. End of chapter. Chapter 3268. This is inappropriate. Great Heavenly Venerate Longing suddenly spoke up. What? 4th brother, are you trying to steal the credit? Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu asked with a cold expression. Haha, 8th brother, you misunderstand. Great Heavenly Venerate Longing smiled and looked at the Serpent Island Lord. He bowed and said, there is no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. There is no need for our Serpent Island to mobilize such a large force for a mere primal chaos palace. If word of this gets out, it will damage our Serpent Island's reputation. Secondly, since the primal Chaos Palace Lord's 2 treasured swords can kill Great Heavenly Venerates, 8th brother might not only be injured, but his life might also be in danger. 8th brother, you and I are both precious and close brothers. I don't want to see you injured. Humph. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu naturally knew that brotherly love was just a passing remark. However, he couldn't refute Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying's words. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu asked, 4th brother, what do you mean? Do you want Father to personally take the treasures of a junior at the Tao Manifestation Realm? Great Heavenly Venerate Longing smiled. I have a plan that can make the Primal Chaos Palace Lord willingly hand over the 2 treasured swords to Father without any bloodshed. Oh! The Serpent Island Lord also listened attentively. Great Heavenly Venerate Longing continued. We can use Father's 800 millionth birthday to invite the leaders of the surrounding forces to come and celebrate. The Primal Chaos Palace Lord will naturally be included. There are 3 benefits to this plan. Great Heavenly Venerate Longing smiled. Firstly, if the Primal Chaos Palace Lord is a smart person and comes to celebrate after receiving the invitation, we will naturally have countless ways to make him hand over the 2 treasured swords when he arrives at Serpent Island. Secondly, if he doesn't know what's good for him and refuses to come, it will be a great disrespect. Serpent Island will then have a good reason to send troops. Thirdly, when the leaders of the other forces come to celebrate Father's birthday, it is impossible for them to come empty-handed. They will definitely prepare generous gifts and even compete with each other. There might be 1 or 2 treasures among these gifts that will help Father break through to the Tao manipulation realm. All the powerhouses in the hall nodded in agreement, praising the brilliant plan. Even the Serpent Island Lord was very satisfied. He looked at Great Heavenly Venerate Longing with fondness. This plan could be said to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. Moreover, he was being considerate of him all the time, which put him in a good mood. Grand Emperor Long Yu's face was gloomy. Originally, he had been the one to suggest this. However, in the end, Great Heavenly Venerate Longing had snatched the credit away with a few words. From the looks of it, Imperial Father obviously agreed with 4th brother's words. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu felt indignant and could not help but sneer. What if the Primal Chaos Palace Master comes to celebrate, but refuses to hand over the sword? That's not up to him. Great Heavenly Venerate Longing shook his head and said, when the time comes, The leaders of the various factions will be there. As long as we make the necessary arrangements, someone will kill him without us having to do anything. Moreover, with the rise of the primal Chaos Palace over the years, there must have been some conflicts with the surrounding influences. I can pass down the order for the surrounding forces to keep an eye on the primal Chaos Palace. If this person doesn't hand over the sword, the other forces will swarm over and raze the primal Chaos Palace to the ground. In that case, he can only take the initiative to hand over the sword. The Flood Dragon Island Master nodded. His fourth son was indeed quick-witted. He was able to devise strategies and predict all the possible situations that could happen. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu gritted his teeth, but he could not think of any loopholes no matter how hard he tried. He could only remain silent with a sullen face. It should have been his credit, but in the end, it was Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying's wedding dress. The Flood Dragon Island Master waved his hand and said, "Let's do as Long Ying said. Pass down the order and send out the invitations." The Myriad Beast Ridge. Over the past 10 years, the Myriad Beast Ridge had undergone earth-shaking changes. The originally barren land of blood and mud had become verdant and lush. Large swaths of lush forests had also grown between the mountain ridges. The Blood River had become clear again, and there were even fish and prawns playing in it. It was a scene of life and everything had recovered. All of this was naturally due to the enormous amount of Genesis Qi gathered when Su Zimo's Qinglian true body cultivated. Su Rue and the others had also vaguely guessed that Su Zimo was not an ordinary human. When they cultivated beside Su Zimo, they could clearly feel that the surrounding Genesis Qi had become denser. Moreover, they felt a kind of reverence for Su Zimo that came from the depths of their souls. This was the sign of bloodline suppression. On this day, a message came from outside the cave dwelling. Su Zimo had awakened from his seclusion. Su Rue and the other two were outside the door. There must be something important. If not, they would not have interrupted Su Zimo's seclusion. Over the years, the Chaos Palace had been attacked by several major forces. However, after Su Zimo killed 3 great heavenly venerates in succession, the surroundings gradually calmed down. Over the years, although some cultivators had joined the Chaos Palace, they lacked heavenly venerates. The new cultivators who joined were at the venerable stage at most. Under such circumstances, as long as a great heavenly venerate appeared, the 6 Ding and 6 Jia gods would not be able to stop them. Only Su Zimo could appear. As a result, the 10 years of seclusion were intermittent, and Su Zimo's cultivation did not show any signs of a breakthrough. Furthermore, due to the harassment of the surrounding factions in the past 10 years, Su Zimo would need some time to rush here, and the Chaos Palace had suffered many casualties as well. The Chaos Palace's foundation is still too weak. Su Zimo frowned slightly and sighed in his heart. Currently, the Chaos Palace did not even have a single heavenly venerate expert. This couldn't go on. Not only was everyone in the Chaos Palace in fear every day, but even he could not calm down to cultivate. Palace Master. At this moment Su Rue and the other two arrived and called out softly. Su Zimo returned to his senses and temporarily suppressed his thoughts. He asked, "What's the matter?" Su Rue handed over a red invitation card and said, "Someone from the Serpent Dragon Island just came with an invitation card. They said that it's the Serpent Dragon Island Master's 800 millionth birthday banquet, and invited Patriarch to attend." The Serpent Dragon Island Master's birthday banquet? Su Zimo frowned. Over the years, he had a rough understanding of the distribution of forces in the surrounding area. The Serpent Dragon Island was the strongest second-grade force in the surrounding area. For example, the Myriad Beast Ridge, Black Goat Ridge, Giant Spirit Valley, Blackbird Forest, Frost Snow Plains, and many other second-grade forces that had conflicts with the Chaos Palace before. He was not interested in the Serpent Dragon Island Master's birthday banquet at all. To him this was just a waste of time. He would rather cultivate in seclusion and break through to the Tao-comprehending realm. But soon, Su Zimo's heart moved and he gradually reacted. Something's not right about this. If he did not attend this banquet, he would definitely offend the Serpent Dragon Island. If the Serpent Dragon Island used this as an excuse to make things difficult for him, he would have no chance of winning against a supreme heavenly venerate without using his bloodline. Even if he used the Avicii and Netherworld swords, the outcome would still be unpredictable. But if he used his bloodline and was recognized, he would be in even greater trouble. End of this chapter. Chapter 3269. More importantly, if the Dragon Island were to gather its army and attack, the Primal Chaos Palace wouldn't be able to withstand it. He had many trump cards, so he could just fight with his full strength. At the very least, he could escape from this place. No one would be able to stop him, but the Primal Chaos Palace would probably be wiped out. Of course, that was only the worst-case scenario. I heard that Flood Dragon Island has sent invitations to hundreds of second-grade forces. The birthday banquet this time will definitely be very lively. Meng Shi was a little excited. The Flood Dragon Island Lord is willing to send us an invitation. He clearly recognizes the Primal Chaos Palace and values the Palace Lord a lot. Chen Qianhe also nodded and said, "We can't go empty-handed when we go to Dragon Island to celebrate. We have to prepare some gifts. After all, it's such a grand birthday banquet. Flood Dragon Island will definitely make a big fuss. We can't be too shabby. We have to bring a decent gift to avoid losing face." Su Rui shook his head. "Our Primal Chaos Palace has been on the run for a few years and has just settled down in the Myriad Beast Ridge. We don't have any decent gifts. Let's bring that Jadewater Coral." Su Zimo said. There was a billion-year-old Jadewater Coral in the storage bag of the Jackal Race's Grand Empyrean, with a trace of Water Taoist rhyme around it. It could help cultivators who cultivated the Grand Tao of Water better comprehend the Tao. Su Rui and the others had a trace of heartache in their eyes. The three of them didn't cultivate the Grand Tao of Water, so they wouldn't need it in the future. But this kind of remnant Taoist rhyme was a rare treasure for Tao-comprehending realm experts. Chen Qianhe smiled. The Flood Dragon Island Lord will definitely be able to feel the Palace Lord's sincerity with this treasure. Perhaps he can exchange it for something else. Palace Lord, Meng Shi asked eagerly. "How many people are you bringing this time? Count me in. I haven't been to Flood Dragon Island and haven't seen so many heavenly venerables gathered together. I'll go alone this time." Su Zimo shook his head. His expression was calm, but there was an unquestionable power in his tone. He could deal with a complicated situation alone, but if he brought Su Rui and the others, he would have some scruples. Meng Shi immediately wilted. Chen Qianhe smiled and said, "Junior brother Meng, guarding the Chaos Palace is the most important thing. You should cultivate to the Tao-comprehending realm as soon as possible. Next time, the Palace Lord will definitely bring you along." Su Rui seemed to have noticed something and probed. "Is there something that the Palace Master is worried about?" Su Zimo remained silent. Could it be that the Flood Dragon Island Master's birthday banquet had other plans? Hearing those words, Su Rui was startled and suddenly said, "I'm afraid that the birthday banquet this time isn't simple. Why don't you reject it?" "It's not appropriate to reject it." Su Zimo voiced out his worries. Su Rui said, "If Flood Dragon Island really has the intention of harming you, Palace Master, going there is like sending a sheep into a tiger's den. You have no choice." Chen Qianhe also reacted and said, "The leaders of Giant Spirit Valley, Blackbird Forest, and Frost Snow Plain that have conflicts with our Primal Chaos Palace will also be present. These are all Grand Empyreans, so it's hard to guarantee that they won't take this opportunity to cause trouble." "That's only secondary." With a grave expression, Su Rui replied, "The Serpent Dragon Island Master is a supreme Empyrean, and he has been famous for many years. If he really wants to kill, the consequences will be unimaginable." "It's fine," Su Zimo said indifferently. "If I want to leave, no one on Flood Dragon Island will be able to stop me." If these words were said by someone else, it would definitely give rise to an extremely absurd feeling. How could a third transformation Tao manifestation supremacy be so arrogant? However, Su Zimo's words had a convincing tone to them. Su Rui and the other two had personally witnessed Su Zimo's methods. Even a Grand Empyrean was easily killed by him. Could it be that the Palace Master already had the strength to fight against a supreme Empyrean? For Su Zimo, the worst-case scenario would be exposing Qinglian's bloodline. After I leave, pass down the order to gather all the cultivators around the 12 source ores in the Myriad Beast Ridge on this mountain, Su Zimo said in a deep voice. I have set up a restriction array around this mountain. If anything happens, it will be able to resist it. Palace Master, are you worried that someone will take this opportunity to harm the Primal Chaos Palace? Su Rui immediately reacted. That's just a possibility. Su Zimo said. Of course, I might be overthinking it. Are we going to abandon all 12 source ores? Meng sure felt a little reluctant. If the birthday celebration goes smoothly, I'll be able to return soon. Su Zimo said. During this period of time, there shouldn't be anyone occupying the 12 source ores. Even if someone does, I can take them back when I return. Su Rui nodded. He also sensed that there was an undercurrent behind this birthday celebration. This matter was very likely related to the survival of the Primal Chaos Palace. Palace Master, why don't you not attend this birthday celebration? Let's escape right now. Meng Sure was worried that something would happen to Su Zimo if he attended the celebration alone. It's fine. Su Zimo smiled faintly. Chen Qianhe also pretended to smile casually. Palace Master, you're just preparing for a rainy day. Perhaps this is just a simple birthday celebration without any danger. I hope so, Meng Sure murmured. The three of them retreated and began to gather the cultivators scattered around the 10,000 Beast Ridge, gathering towards the peak of Su Zimo's cave abode. Su Zimo had limited time and energy. The 10,000 Beast Ridge was way too huge, and he did not have the time to cover the entire 10,000 Beast Ridge with restriction dermic formations. For the past 10 years, he had only set up some restriction dermic formations around the mountain peak. At the same time, Su Zimo summoned the 12 Luding Liujia gods back to guard the 12 formation cores of the mountain peak. Su Zimo spent another day reinforcing the restriction dermic formations around the mountain peak. After everything was arranged, Su Zimo set off alone for Wirem Island. Wirem Island was located above an extremely vast ocean. It was formed by a series of islands. From afar, it looked like a gigantic Wirem coiled above the ocean with a majestic aura. The moment Su Zimo arrived at the ocean, he caught sight of a group of guards of Wirem Island. Their leader was also a supremacy at the third transformation of the Tao Manifestation Realm. After reporting the name of the Chaos Palace, the guard commander sized up Su Zimo with a look of disdain in his eyes. Even though they were at the same cultivation realm, and even though Su Zimo was a palace master, the guard commander was confident enough to look down on Su Zimo. That was because he was a guard of Wirem Island. Their statuses were determined by their backgrounds. Follow me. The guard commander did not make things difficult for Su Zimo, and merely said coldly, You're late. The leaders of the various territories are already here. Su Zimo ignored the person with an indifferent expression. Under the lead of the guard commander, Su Zimo arrived at the island where the dragon head was and finally caught sight of the majestic Wirem Palace. Chapter 3270. Under the lead of the guard commander, Su Zimo stepped into the Wirem Grand Hall, and instantly, many gazes were focused on him. The seats in the Jiao Dragon Hall were already filled with people. They were all leaders of their respective forces. There were more than 1,000 heavenly venerables and great heavenly venerables. These heavenly venerables and great heavenly venerables looked at Su Zimo with a hint of scrutiny, some with a hint of playfulness, and some with strong hostility. With so many heavenly venerables and great heavenly venerables gathered together, they formed an extremely powerful aura. The moment Su Zimo stepped into the hall, he felt this aura envelop him. If it were any other venerables, they wouldn't be able to withstand it. The moment the guard captain stepped into the hall, he felt his chest tighten. His face turned pale, and he quickly retreated. Su Zimo stood in the hall with a calm expression as he looked at the gray-haired old man sitting in the center of the hall. This should be the Peak Tao Comprehending Realm Supreme Venerate, the Flood Dragon Island Lord. The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island had a kind smile on his face. However, there was an extremely shocking power hidden in his body. He was indeed very strong. Although Su Zimo hadn't exchanged blows with him, he could still feel how powerful the Flood Dragon Island Lord was. At the same time, the Flood Dragon Island Lord was also sizing up Su Zimo. Interesting. The Flood Dragon Island Lord thought to himself. It was rare to be able to remain calm under the aura of heavenly venerables and great heavenly venerables. And this child actually dared to meet his gaze without any intention of avoiding it. He was indeed extraordinarily courageous. "You are the Chaos Palace Lord?" A voice echoed in the hall. A great heavenly venerate dragon stared at Su Zimo and said, "What arrogance! If you hadn't come, I'm afraid I would have personally gone to invite you. I was delayed by something." Su Zimo didn't care about the great heavenly venerate dragon's mockery, and only replied indifferently. He had come to offer his blessings, and did not intend to make the two sides at daggers drawn, because of a dispute of words. Another dragon Grand Empyrean got up and smiled. "I'm Dragon Eagle. Thank you, fellow cultivator Su, for coming to celebrate my father's birthday. Please come sit here." As he spoke, he pointed at the empty seat beside him. The arrangement of the seats in the main hall was clearly a little particular. Those in the front row on both sides of the hall were all Grand Empyreans. Behind these Grand Empyreans were the Empyrean powerhouses. The empty seat beside Great Heavenly Venerate Dragon Eagle wasn't just in the front row. It was also very close to Great Heavenly Venerate Dragon Eagle's seat. This seat even overshadowed most of the Grand Empyreans present. Su Zimo raised his eyebrows slightly. Great Empyrean Dragon Eagle looked very kind and courteous. However, by letting him sit beside him, he was clearly roasting him. It seemed that he was right. Today's birthday banquet was not so simple. Thinking of this, Su Zimo did not decline. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he went to the seat and sat down as if there was no one around. "How dare you?" Su Zimo had just sat down when a white-haired man across from him shouted. His eyes were fierce as he coldly said, "That is the seat of the Grand Empyreans. You are just a puny supremacy. How dare you sit there?" Unsurprisingly, this person should be the leader of the Frost Snowfield. A Frost Snow Wolf. There was a Grand Empyrean in the Frost Snowfield who had died at his hands 7 years ago. It was not hard to understand why this Frost Snow Wolf had jumped up and targeted him. "It's fine." Great Empyrean Dragon Eagle smiled. Fellow cultivator Su led the Primal Chaos Palace to dominate the Myriad Beast Ridge. His reputation has risen in recent years, so he has the qualifications. Since he came late, he should at least show some appreciation. The tallest man present, who looked like an iron tower, said in a muffled voice. This was Great Empyrean Giant Spirit. 5 years ago, a Great Empyrean from Giant Spirit Valley had attacked a source mine in the Myriad Beast Ridge, and had been killed by Su Zimo. "We won't make things difficult for you," Great Empyrean Giant Spirit said. "Stand up and bow to our leaders and the Flood Dragon Island Lord in apology. Drink 3 cups of wine as punishment, and this matter will be over for now." "That's how it should be." The leader of Blackbird Forest agreed immediately. "That's right." The other Empyreans and Great Empyreans echoed in unison. In an instant, Su Zimo became the target of everyone's criticism. From beginning to end, the Flood Dragon Island Lord did not say a word. He only watched this scene with a smile. With his status, there was no need for him to personally take action. He only needed to watch from the sidelines. Su Zimo took the wine jug and slowly poured a cup of wine before raising it. Drinking wine is not a problem. Su Zimo held the wine cup and looked around. He said indifferently, "But if others want to force me to drink, the taste of this wine will change. I don't like it." With that, Su Zimo turned the wine cup upside down, and the wine spilled all over the floor. Whoosh! A commotion instantly erupted in the hall. "How dare you! Arrogant!" Many Empyreans and Great Empyreans stood up and stared at Su Zimo with unfriendly and murderous expressions. Su Zimo's actions clearly showed that he did not care about the leaders present. "What?" Su Zimo looked at the Empyreans and Great Empyreans and asked, "Are you all going to cause a ruckus at the Flood Dragon Island Lord's birthday banquet?" "Enough." At this moment, the Flood Dragon Island Lord suddenly spoke with a smile. "Anyone who comes as a guest, You don't have to make things difficult for the Chaos Palace Lord. Great Empyrean God Longing nodded slightly and signaled for the leaders to calm down and sit down first. The leaders all understood. The Frost Snow Wolf snorted. If not for the Flood Dragon Island Lord, I would have killed you just now. At this moment, the leader of Blackbird Forest asked, We came here to celebrate the Flood Dragon Island Lord's birthday with generous gifts. What gift did the Chaos Palace Lord bring? This is a billion-year-old Jadewater coral. There are remnants of the water Dao on it. Su Zimo took out the Jadewater coral from his storage bag and placed it on the table in front of him. A few leaders were tempted when they saw the Jadewater coral. Greed flashed through their eyes. Even the Frost Snow Wolf was a little envious. He cultivated the Great Dao of Frost, which was inextricably linked to the Great Dao of Water. If he could obtain this Jadewater coral, it would definitely help him better comprehend the Great Dao. This gift was indeed very valuable, and could be said to be very sincere. Great Empyrean Dragon Eagle looked at Great Empyrean Mighty Spirit, and nodded slightly. Great Empyrean Mighty Spirit understood and suddenly said loudly, Chaos Palace Lord, this gift is a little shabby. I heard that you have better treasures. Do you not want to give them to the Flood Dragon Island Lord? I have also heard about it. The leader of Blackbird Forest sneered. Fellow Taoist Su has 2 sharp swords. Why don't you take them out and give them to the Flood Dragon Island Lord as a birthday gift? You want to use a lousy coral to fool people? Do you really not care about the Flood Dragon Island? Su Zimo's eyes moved as he looked at the Flood Dragon Island Lord, Great Empyrean Dragon Eagle, and the others. After observing their expressions, he understood. So you came for the Avicii and Netherworld swords. End of chapter. Chapter 3271. Does fellow Taoist Su really have 2 peerless swords? Great Heavenly Venerate Longing pretended not to know and asked curiously. Yes. Su Zimo nodded and put away the Jadewater coral. Now that he understood the purpose of this birthday banquet, there was no need to give away the Jadewater coral. In that case, why don't you take it out and show it to us? Great Heavenly Venerate Longing said with a smile. You can take it out. Su Zimo said indifferently. I'm just afraid that today's birthday banquet will turn into a funeral banquet. Everyone was in an uproar when they heard that. This was equivalent to openly falling out with them. There was no longer any room for negotiation between the 2 sides. And there was no need to continue hiding. Although the Serpent Island Lord had not said much from the beginning, as if he had nothing to do with it. However, Su Zimo knew very well that without the Serpent Island Lord's approval, this so-called birthday banquet would not have such a big lineup. The smile on Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying's face instantly disappeared. Su Zimo, you'd better know your place. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying no longer pretended, and sent a voice transmission. If you obediently hand over the 2 swords today, you might still have a chance to live if Royal Father is merciful. Of course, this was just a casual remark. Regardless of whether Su Zimo handed over the swords today or not, he would not be able to leave alive. Great Heavenly Venerate Longing added, If you don't know your place, the myriad beast ridge you are in will also be divided by the Frost Snow Plains, Blackbird Forest, Giant Spirit Valley, and many other factions. The Chaos Palace will also be destroyed because of this. Are you threatening me? Su Zimo turned his head and looked at Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying. You can understand it that way. Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying's tone was cold. What a pity, Su Zimo sighed softly. Suddenly, Su Zimo attacked at an astonishing speed. He reached out his palm and placed it directly on Great Heavenly Venerate Long Ying's face. His 5 fingers suddenly exerted force. Puchi! Blood mist spewed out. Su Zimo's palm could even crush a Great Heavenly Venerate's spirit treasure. Like this, Great Empyrean Dragon Eagle's head was instantly crushed by Su Zimo. His primordial spirit was extinguished, and he died on the spot. The distance between them was too close. In addition, Great Empyrean Dragon Eagle had never imagined that Su Zimo would dare to take the initiative in front of so many Empyreans, Great Empyreans, and his father, a Supreme Empyrean. Moreover, it was a killing move right from the start. Merciless and decisive. Not to mention him, even the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island, who was sitting on the high seat, couldn't react in time. Great Empyrean Dragon Eagle's death caused an uproar among the experts in the hall. Their minds were shaken. This Su Zimo actually dared to kill someone at the Jiao Dragon Island Lord's birthday banquet. Moreover, under the watchful eyes of the Jiao Long Island Lord, the fourth son was killed. The only one who was happy was Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu. Fourth brother, oh fourth brother, you've used up all your tricks. I didn't expect you to die in such a humiliating manner today. Ha 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 ha. Grand Empyrean Long Yu laughed wildly in his heart. Aunt, how dare you? The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island slammed the table and roared at the sky. The dragon's roar reverberated throughout the hall, causing the entire hall to shake continuously. There was a difference of an entire major realm between them. Su Zimo's ears buzzed when he heard the dragon's roar without using his blood chi. Boom! The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island reached out with his huge dragon claw and grabbed at Su Zimo. After Su Zimo killed Great Empyrean Dragon Eagle, he had already retreated out of the hall, while everyone was still in shock. Stop him! All the Empyreans and Great Empyreans reacted and blocked in front of Su Zimo. Humph! Su Zimo held up a world. At the same time, two sword lights broke through the chaos and descended into the world. In an instant, the temperature in the Jiao Dragon Palace plummeted. Su Zimo held his sword with both hands and slashed forward. Poof! 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 All the Empyreans, Great Empyreans, worlds, and Dao seals were sliced in half like paper under the Avicii and Netherworld swords. This slash was really like cutting melons and vegetables. In an instant, blood gushed out of the Jiao Dragon Palace. More than 10 Empyreans and Great Empyreans were killed on the spot by the Avicii and Netherworld swords. The remaining leaders were about to rush forward. But when they saw this scene, they were so frightened that they retreated, not daring to go forward. The leaders pulled away and took out many weapons and numinous treasures, smashing them in Su Zimo's direction. They were as dense as rain, and the momentum was terrifying. Su Zimo swung the Avicii and Netherworld swords with both hands. Following a series of clanging sounds, the weapons and numinous treasures were all broken by the Avicii and Netherworld swords. None of them were spared. They are indeed good swords. The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island's eyes shone brightly when he saw this scene. There was a hint of excitement in his eyes. The pain of losing his son had long been forgotten. After this delay, the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island's dragon claw had already descended. There was a loud rumble. Su Zimo's world was on the verge of collapse. It was almost destroyed by the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island's dragon claw. Su Zimo's eyes flashed coldly. He waved the Netherworld sword and slashed at the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island's dragon claw. The Netherworld sword was the #1 killer. Su Zimo believed that as long as the Netherworld sword hurt the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island, even if it was just a small wound, it would be enough to kill him. The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island had just seen the sharpness of the Avicii and Netherworld swords, so he did not dare to resist with his flesh and blood. He quickly retracted his dragon claw. Clang! Even so, the toughest fingertips of the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island's dragon claw were neatly cut off. Fortunately, there was no bloodline on the fingertips of the dragon claw, just like human fingernails. After being cut off, there was no wound, so the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island escaped death. Even so, the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island was still covered in cold sweat. The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island hurriedly urged his chi and blood to support a side of the world. He burst out a primordial spirit seal and attacked Su Zimo. Su Zimo's expression did not change. In his sea of consciousness, his primordial spirit sat in the middle of the lotus throne of good fortune. Many petals closed in green brilliance surrounded him, forming an impenetrable barrier. It blocked the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island's primordial spirit seal. At this time, the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island was already in front of Su Zimo, with the two halberds in his hands. The traces of the Great Tao had almost covered the world. This world was much stronger and more stable than Su Zimo's world. Su Zimo's chaotic world could not withstand it, and was soon crushed and collapsed. The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island's chi and blood surged. His eyes were fierce. The two halberds danced in his hands like two ferocious and bloodthirsty flood dragons, biting at Su Zimo. Su Zimo held the Netherworld sword and blocked it. Clang! The netherworld sword hit the short halberd and sparks flew. Su Zimo's body trembled. A huge and majestic power came from the short halberd. It was far stronger than his. He almost could not hold the netherworld sword in his hand, and it flew out. Ha 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 ha. The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island laughed. My two short halberds are supreme celestial spiritual treasures. They are made of cold iron from the bottom of the sea for more than 10 billion years. Your sword can't cut them. Although he said that, the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island was secretly shocked. He could clearly see that the netherworld sword had already left a shallow sword mark on his short halberd. End of chapter. Chapter 3272. The moment Flood Dragon Island Lord said that, before the smugness on his face disappeared, he saw Su Zimo waving the Avicii sword in his left hand towards his short halberd. You overestimate yourself. The island lord sneered and waved the short halberd in his hand. He became even more ferocious, and stabbed at Su Zimo's infinite pain sword. Clang! The halberd and sword clashed, creating an ear-piercing sound. The tip of the halberd and sword collided, creating a sharp contrast. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the Avicii sword slashed the short halberd in half. It was as if a piece of bamboo had been sliced in half. This was much more difficult than cutting the short halberd. A look of realization flashed across Su Zimo's eyes. Ever since he obtained the infinite pain sword and netherworld sword, he had only used them once, and did not know much about them. The infinite pain sword was known as the sharpest sword, and it was indeed on display at this moment. The netherworld sword's killing intent was stronger, but its sharpness was inferior. Therefore, the netherworld sword could not cut the island lord's short halberd in half, but the infinite pain sword could. The island lord was shocked and quickly withdrew his hand. If he had been a little slower, his dragon claw would have been cut off by the infinite pain sword. The more it was like this, the more jealous the island lord was of the two treasured swords. Without waiting for him to think, Su Zimo charged at him with the two swords in hand. The island lord was wary of the infinite pain sword and netherworld sword's sharpness, so he did not dare to collide with it and retreated. In terms of strength, he was superior to Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo had the infinite pain sword and netherworld sword. His sword techniques were exquisite, and his attacks were continuous and airtight. The island lord had no chance to counterattack at all. Fortunately, the surrounding heavenly venerables and grand heavenly venerables helped him. Otherwise, his situation would be even more dangerous. This can't go on. The island lord frowned and thought. It seems that I still have to use that treasure map. After obtaining the nameless treasure map, he had not been able to comprehend its mysteries. Whether it was his bloodline, divine sense, or Tao techniques, there was no reaction. However, this nameless treasure map had an extremely powerful aspect. Even the nameless treasure map could devour everything, no matter if it was dead or alive. So long as it fell into the nameless treasure map, it would be devoured and disappear. In the past, he had even used the nameless treasure map to devour a supreme heavenly venerate. However, this ability was not without its drawbacks. Firstly, he could not control the nameless treasure map. In other words, he had no way of controlling the nameless treasure map to actively devour other people or treasures. He could only set up some traps to lure his opponents into them. Secondly, whether it was a living being or a treasure, once it entered the nameless treasure map, it had nothing to do with him. He couldn't find it, nor could he take it out. It was precisely because of this that the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island had yet to make a move. He believed that with the ability of the nameless treasure map, it would absolutely be able to devour the Avicii and netherworld swords. However, if he swallowed these two peerless swords, although he could easily kill Su Zimo, he wouldn't gain any benefits. The Flood Dragon Island master retreated while setting up traps. It would be best if he could devour Su Zimo, but at the same time, he would be able to protect those two peerless swords. All of a sudden, the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island suddenly launched a counterattack. His great Tao phenomenon and bloodline phenomenon appeared as he summoned dozens of divine weapons from his storage bag and smashed them towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo's world had already dissipated. Although he was wielding the Avicii and netherworld swords, He could not withstand the ferocious attacks of the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island. With the help of the Avicii and Netherworld swords, he managed to defend against the incoming divine weapons and numinous treasures. However, he could not dispel the immense power contained within those divine weapons and numinous treasures. Coupled with the attacks of the Great Tao phenomenon and Bloodline phenomenon, Su Zimo suffered an immense impact and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth as he retreated continuously. Of course, this bit of injury did not affect Qinglian's true body at all. Right then, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He caught sight of a gigantic painting appearing behind him from the corner of his eye. It was blurry and nothing could be seen clearly. Where did that painting come from? Su Zimo did not think too much about it, and slashed in reverse. The Netherworld sword slashed down on the picture, causing it to tremble. The heart of the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island shuddered as well, afraid that the Netherworld sword would sever the nameless treasure painting. Thankfully, after the nameless treasure painting trembled, it recovered rapidly, and there were no creases or sword marks on the painting. Not only that, the nameless treasure painting even released a tremendous suction force that wanted to devour the Netherworld sword. As for Su Zimo, he gripped the Netherworld sword tightly in his hand, as though he could not let go in time. Perhaps he could not bear to part with the treasure sword. It was devoured by the nameless treasure painting along with the Netherworld sword. It disappeared in the blink of an eye. No! The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island exclaimed. He was filled with endless regret as he watched the Avicii and Netherworld swords being devoured by the nameless treasure painting. Su Zimo went on a killing spree at today's birthday banquet, and dyed the hall red with blood. Even his fourth son died, and his heavenly venerable spirit treasure was destroyed. In the end, he had nothing to show for it. The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island stared at the nameless treasure, painting not far away with love and hate. In the Lord of Jiao Dragon's hall, the leaders of the various forces let out a sigh of relief. When they faced the primal Chaos Palace Master with the two swords, they were all shocked. They had never seen such terrifying treasured swords. Heavenly Venerables and Grand Heavenly Venerables were like paper under the two treasured swords. In just a short while, more than 30 Heavenly Venerables and Grand Heavenly Venerables had died in the hall. The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island is really powerful. A leader of an unknown force stepped forward and revealed a flattering smile. He praised, "That guy was so arrogant just now. Fortunately, the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island showed your might and suppressed him in time." The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island was even more annoyed that he had lost two peerless treasured swords. When he heard the words "the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island is really powerful," he became even more annoyed. He suddenly reached out with his giant dragon claw and instantly smashed the Heavenly Venerable's head. He shouted, "I'll let you see my power too." When the other experts saw this, they subconsciously took half a step back. They looked fearful and did not dare to speak casually. The Heavenly Venerable just now had clearly killed the Lord of Jiao Dragon Island because he had nowhere to vent his anger. Grand Heavenly Venerable Long Yu took half a step forward and said, "Father, my condolences for fourth brother's death. Take care of yourself. I'll bring people to flatten the Primal Chaos Palace and take revenge for fourth brother. Go." The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island waved his hand with a gloomy expression. The three leaders of Giant Spirit Valley, Blackbird Forest, and Frost Snow Plain also took the opportunity to say, "We're willing to follow Grand Heavenly Venerable Long Yu and flatten the Primal Chaos Palace." They had already formed a grudge with the Primal Chaos Palace, so they naturally would not let go of this opportunity to loot a burning house. Grand Heavenly Venerable Long Yu looked around and said, "Today's birthday banquet is not over yet. Fellow Taoists, please wait here. I'll bring the heads of all the living beings in the Primal Chaos Palace to accompany Father's wine and add some joy to this birthday banquet. We look forward to fellow Taoist Long Yu's triumphant return." The leaders of the various forces shouted in unison. End of chapter. Chapter 3273. In the eyes of the Flood Dragon Island Lord, Su Zimo was devoured by the nameless treasure map. However, Su Zimo was the only one who knew the situation clearly. After the nameless treasure map was struck by the Netherworld sword, it released an aura that Su Zimo felt close to, or rather familiar. That aura actually fused with his chaos world. Moreover, Su Zimo suddenly had a feeling that the treasure map seemed to be related to him. Seeing that the Netherworld sword was devoured by the nameless treasure map, Su Zimo had enough time to withdraw. However, in a flash, Su Zimo still made a decision to follow the Netherworld sword into the treasure map to investigate. There was another reason for him to make that decision. The scroll had appeared beside him without a sound. His spiritual perception hadn't alerted him at all. In other words, the treasure map might not cause him any harm. Su Zimo followed the sword and entered the treasure map. After passing through the vast fog, his vision suddenly opened up, and he arrived at another world. Looking around, this world was filled with mountain ranges and lush vegetation. It was full of vitality. There was actually a universe within this scroll, and it was a completely different world. Furthermore, Su Zimo could sense the existence of spirit chi, essence chi and genesis chi in the world as well. All of a sudden, in this world, Su Zimo could sense a series of powerful auras. Some of them were not weaker than him, and some were even stronger than him. Su Zimo's spirit consciousness moved. He saw figures rushing over from afar. They were all at the Tao manifestation realm, and there were tens of thousands of them. Moreover, Su Zimo could clearly sense that those supremacies were plant life forms. Immediately after, even more powerful figures appeared. There were hundreds of them, and all of them were Tao comprehension realm experts. Heavenly Venerables, Grand Heavenly Venerables, and even Supreme Heavenly Venerables. They were all plant life forms. Strange. Su Zimo frowned secretly. Haha, someone else came in. I wonder which unlucky bastard is going to be trapped here from now on. Our place is pretty good too. It's a world of its own, far away from strife. A burst of discussion came from the crowd. The experts in this world didn't hide their voices, as if they didn't care if Su Zimo heard them. Fellow Taoists, may I ask where we are? Su Zimo looked around and asked with cupped fists. An extraordinary ultimate heavenly venerate stepped forward and said, "This is the 3 small realms of the universe creation diagram. Once you enter this place, you will not be able to leave. Universe fortune diagram? 3 small realms? Heaven and earth creation." Su Zimo murmured deep in thought. That supreme heavenly venerate smiled. "You don't have to doubt it. No matter how powerful you are, you won't be able to leave this place even if you cultivate to the Tao manipulation realm." Even those in the Tao manipulation realm couldn't leave? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, "Could it be that you can only leave after entering the Saint realm?" The surrounding experts roared with laughter when they heard this. That supreme heavenly venerate said, "No one can become a saint in the universe creation diagram. Even those in the Tao manipulation realm couldn't leave. It was also impossible to become a saint here." Su Zimo frowned and asked, "In other words, there's no way to leave this place?" "Of course," that supreme heavenly venerate said indifferently. "Actually, there's another way." Someone in the crowd muttered. "It's been more than 6 billion years, and no one has been able to refine the universe creation diagram. Can we expect the supremacy to refine it?" Another person pursed his lips. A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. More than 6 billion years. He had heard from Su Rue and the others that there was a huge upheaval in the Great Thousand World more than 6 billion years ago, and the primal chaos sacred land was destroyed as a result. This so-called universe fortune map should be related to the turmoil that happened back then. The word creation was in it, and this place was full of living beings. It was very likely that it was related to the primal chaos sacred land back then. Furthermore, Su Zimo had vaguely established a connection with the universe creation diagram the moment he arrived here. Even his bloodline was vaguely restless. "You can find a cave abode here to cultivate," said the supreme heavenly venerate. "I don't care what your identity is outside. Once you're in the universe creation diagram, you'd better behave yourself and not cause any trouble." That supreme heavenly venerate's tone was very rude, but the living beings around him did not look at him with any hostility. Su Zimo still had many doubts in his heart, but the most important thing now was to leave this place as soon as possible. If he was right, Flood Dragon Island would definitely not let the Primal Chaos Palace off. Although the Primal Chaos Palace had the 6 armor gods and forbidden formations, it would not last for long. He had to rush back as soon as possible. The key to leaving this place should be to refine the universe creation diagram. Seeing that everyone had dispersed, Su Zimo did not look for any cave abodes. He sat down cross-legged and tried to establish a connection with the universe creation diagram. When he propped up a world, the primal chaos world resonated with the universe creation diagram. Sounds of Dharmic spiral Sanskrit instantly rang out. In Su Zimo's primal chaos world, the mark of a treasure map vaguely appeared. When the people who had already dispersed heard the Sanskrit, they could not help but tremble. They all turned around with disbelief in their eyes. How is this possible? This person actually managed to refine the universe fortune diagram? Even the Tao comprehending realm experts were dumbfounded. Just now, that supreme heavenly venerate was even more dumbfounded. For more than 6 billion years, countless experts who had lived here had tried to refine the universe creation diagram. But no one had succeeded. But this person had just entered and already resonated with the universe creation diagram. More and more experts sensed the commotion and gathered here. Boom, boom, boom. In the distant horizon, terrifying auras burst forth, far surpassing that of a supreme heavenly venerate. Even Su Zimo, who was refining the universe creation diagram, was shocked. Only a Tao manipulation realm expert could emit such an aura. There were Tao manipulation realm experts in the universe creation diagram. And there was more than one. Could it be because of the primal chaos world he cultivates? That supreme heavenly venerate said subconsciously with a blank expression. That's not the case. Right then, a Tao venerate expert appeared behind that supreme heavenly venerate and said in a deep voice, Senior brother Xiang also cultivates a primal chaos world, but he can't refine the universe creation diagram. Refining the universe creation diagram should have something to do with bloodline. That supreme heavenly venerate opened his mouth and asked after a long while, could the legend back then be true? That Tao venerate nodded. In just a short while, many Tao manipulation realm experts had arrived. At a glance, there were hundreds of them. Not only were there Tao venerates, but there were also great venerates and supreme experts. Lesser Tao manipulation realm experts were known as Tao venerates. Greater Tao manipulation realm experts were known as great venerates. Perfected Tao manipulation realm experts were known as Tao venerates. It seems like the fated person has appeared. A supreme elder looked at Su Zimo, who was sitting cross-legged, and nodded with a smile. End of chapter. Chapter 3274. In fact, Su Zimo had already refined the Qianquan creation diagram. With the help of the Qianquan creation diagram, he could even sense everything in it. It was only now that he understood why the Supreme Celestial Venerate called this place the Three Small Realms. The Qianquan creation diagram contained Qianquan and creation. It was actually divided into 3 realms. The 3 realms here were roughly divided into the mortal world, the immortal world, and the Tao world. Hence, it was called the 3 small realms. The mortal world was similar to the minor kiliacosm. The immortal world was similar to the medium-class world. The Tao world corresponded to the greater kiliacosm. However, the 3 small realms in the Qianquan creation diagram were much inferior to the real 3,000 worlds. It was like the difference between a drop of water and an ocean. Moreover, the life in the 3 small realms was extremely monotonous. Almost all of them were of the plant race. It was rare to see living beings of other races. Of course, the living beings living in the 3 small realms could also cultivate and ascend normally. Through the Qianquan creation diagram, Su Zimo could roughly detect that there were hundreds of Tao manipulation realm experts here. This number was too shocking. Once these Tao manipulation realm experts descended into the greater kiliacosm, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. It would probably be enough to wipe out the entire southeastern territory. Of course, with so many experts watching, Su Zimo also found it difficult to maintain his composure. There was no need for a supreme venerate. Any supreme venerate could kill him. Little friend, don't worry. you can continue to cultivate. Seemingly sensing that Su Zimo's mind was a little shaken, the Supreme Venerate Elder smiled and said, "Since you already control the Qianquan creation diagram, you are the only ruler in this world. No one can hurt you. Otherwise, you will be punished by the heavens." When he heard that, Su Zimo was finally relieved. After refining the Qianquan creation diagram, he did not get up immediately. It was because the Qianquan creation diagram contained a trace of the most primitive chaos qi. When the Qianquan creation diagram merged with his chaos world, this trace of chaos qi naturally merged into his chaos world. Before this, Su Zimo had never found the opportunity to step into the Tao comprehension realm. And this trace of chaos qi was the perfect opportunity. A strand of chaos energy fused into his world. He didn't even need to spend years on comprehension. Instead, it directly helped him step into the Tao comprehending realm, breaking through in one go. At the same time, Su Zimo's primordial spirit also rose to the level of a supreme celestial venerable. After a while, Su Zimo let out a long howl and soared into the air. Small success in the Tao comprehending realm, becoming an Empyrean. If it weren't for this strand of chaos qi remaining in the universe fortune diagram, he didn't know how long it would take for him to enter the Tao comprehending realm. Many of the surrounding experts looked at him with complicated expressions. It was still the Supreme Elder who stood up first. He bowed to Su Zimo with a respectful expression and said in a deep voice, "Greetings, Lord." Su Zimo was stunned. The person in front of him was a Supreme Being expert, yet he had actually bowed his head and acknowledged him as his master. The hundreds of Tao masters, great masters, and supreme masters around also bowed to salute. Among the crowd, there were still a few Supreme Being experts who were standing with their heads held high. However, they frowned slightly and looked a little reluctant. But after seeing the situation around them, these Supreme Beings also lowered their heads slightly. All the Tao-controlling realm experts present did so. The surrounding heavenly masters and Supreme Beings also hurriedly bowed to him and addressed him as Lord. "What is the meaning of this?" Su Zimo asked in a deep voice. He had refined the universe fortune diagram. In this world, it was equivalent to controlling the life and death of all living beings in the three small realms. It was reasonable that some people would submit to him, but judging from the expressions of most of the experts, they didn't seem to be under coercion. It was more like they were sincere. The Supreme Elder said, "I am Lin Meng. We are all from the Chaos Sacred Land. Because more than 6 billion years ago, there was a great calamity in the Great Thousand World, which led to the destruction of the Chaos Sacred Land. The Sacred Master died in battle and countless saints fell. Before the Sacred Master died, he was worried that the Sacred Land would be destroyed, and we would not be able to escape. So he sent some of the people in the Sacred Land into his universe fortune diagram and sealed them." Hearing this, Su Zimo suddenly asked, "Was the Sacred Master of Chaos a Chaos Qinglian? What is a Chaos Qinglian?" Supreme Elder Lin Meng was stunned and a little confused. He shook his head slightly and said, "The Sacred Master was the Creation Qinglian. He achieved the Creation Great Tao." A trace of doubt arose in Su Zimo's heart. Looking at Supreme Elder Lin Meng's expression, it seemed like he didn't know much about the Chaos Qinglian. The Sacred Master of Chaos was only a Creation Qinglian back then. Su Zimo suddenly remembered that everything about the Chaos Qinglian had only appeared in his inherited memories and the black-robed man's mouth. There was no record of the Chaos Qinglian in any ancient books. Could it be that even an expert like a Supreme Elder didn't know about the existence of the Chaos Qinglian? Su Zimo was sure that the Chaos Qinglian had been shattered in the Great Calamity more than 6 billion years ago. That was why it had split into 4. The Sacred Master of Chaos was the Creation Qinglian. Then what role did the chaotic green lotus play in that Great Calamity all those years ago? "My lord, shall I continue?" Supreme Elder Lin Meng probed when he saw that Su Zimo was silent. Su Zimo nodded. Supreme Lin Meng said, "When the Sacred Leader sent us into the universe fortune diagram, he said that if anyone could refine this diagram in the future, that person would be our new master and the new Sacred Leader of the Chaos Sacred Land. Only my lord can open the seal of the universe fortune diagram and take us out of here. If I'm not wrong, my lord should have the creation Qinglian bloodline. Su Zimo didn't say anything else. He didn't just have the creation Qinglian bloodline in his body. He also had the red lotus of hellfire bloodline. Su Zimo still had many doubts, but now wasn't the time to talk about them. Now the Chaos Sacred Land is long gone. Only the Chaos Palace remains. There aren't many people, and it's about to be destroyed. Su Zimo said, "You can follow me to the greater 1,000 domains to save people." My lord. Hearing this, Supreme Elder Lin Ming coughed softly and said, "My lord, your cultivation is too low. You can't break the seal of the universe fortune diagram on us. Only when your primordial spirit reaches the Tao manipulation realm can the Tao venerables, great venerables, and supreme experts here follow you to the greater 1,000 domains." Oh, Su Zimo was slightly stunned. His primordial spirit had reached the level of a supreme celestial venerable. In that case, he could only take the experts below the Tao manipulation realm out of the universe fortune diagram. Su Zimo immediately understood the deeper meaning behind the Chaos Sacred Master's actions back then. Refining the universe fortune diagram could indeed become the master of this place and control life and death. However, if he left the universe fortune diagram and came to the greater 1,000 domains, he wouldn't be able to control these people. Back then, these people respected the Chaos Sacred Master. Firstly, there were past relationships. Secondly, the Chaos Sacred Master had absolute strength. However, the successor they trusted would be strangers to these people, and their strength wouldn't be that strong. Moreover, more than 6 billion years have passed, and it was inevitable that there would be changes in people's hearts. If the successor was only in the Tao comprehension realm, but brought Tao venerables or supremes to the greater 1,000 domains, it might lead to a fatal disaster. Back then, the Chaos Sacred Master made this arrangement completely as a form of protection for the successor. End of chapter. Chapter 3275. I don't know what kind of powerful enemy the Lord of the Great Thousand World is facing. If it's too dangerous, it's better to hide and cultivate here. Lin Meng said. Even a sage realm cultivator would find it difficult to forcefully open the universe fortune diagram of the sacred leader. When the Lord's primordial spirit reaches the Tao manipulation realm and unseals us, we can protect the Lord and fight our way out to rebuild the primal chaos sacred land. That won't be necessary. Su Zimo shook his head slightly. A few supreme heavenly venerables were enough to deal with the Serpent Island. It was said that the Serpent Island Lord was the only supreme heavenly venerable on the island. Now, he had reached the Tao comprehension realm and become a heavenly venerable, and his primordial spirit had reached the level of a supreme heavenly venerable. Even if he went out alone, he could handle it. However, it was more appropriate to bring some people with him to deal with the Serpent Island as soon as possible and return to the Primal Chaos Palace. Supreme Lin Meng sighed and said, "We've been trapped in the universe creation diagram for too long. It's been more than 6 billion years. Even some Tao venerables have exhausted their lifespan. When I first came in, I was at my peak. Now I'm in my twilight years." The rest of the Tao masters sighed as well. Supreme Lin Meng said, "There were tens of thousands of heavenly venerables who entered the universe creation diagram. Only a few broke through and reached the Tao manipulation realm. The rest have already exhausted their lifespan and died. A Tao manipulation realm Tao venerable had a lifespan of 10 billion years. A Tao comprehension realm heavenly venerable only had a lifespan of 1 billion years. However, it had been more than 6 billion years since they entered the universe creation diagram. In other words, except for the Tao venerables in front of him, all his old friends had passed away. The thousands of heavenly venerables around him were almost all creatures of the 3 small realms. They weren't his old friends from the primal chaos sacred land." Supreme Lin Ming said, "Although there are some cultivation resources in the 3 small realms, source ores are extremely rare. Source ores didn't appear out of thin air. In addition to being nourished by Genesis Chi over a long period of time, The corpses and remains of many powerful beings had to be buried deep underground to form Genesis ores. In the Great Thousand World, the corpses of countless powerhouses had been buried for countless years. There were very few conflicts and killings in the three little realms in the universe fortune diagram. Only the corpses of experts who had exhausted their lifespans and died could form a limited amount of source ores. There were only about 100,000 supremacies here. After entering the Tao comprehending realm, he no longer needed source ores to cultivate. However, without a sufficient number of supremacies, the number of people who could step into the Tao comprehending realm and become celestial venerables was also not many. There were only slightly more than 3,000 people. Su Zimo still had some doubts in his heart. There were hundreds of Tao venerables here, but there were only about 3,000 celestial venerables. It seemed to be a small number. Only now did he understand why. Supremacy Lin Meng didn't know what kind of opponent Su Zimo was facing. He was still a little worried as he asked, I wonder if these 3,000 celestial venerables can help my lord overcome this tribulation. Su Zimo smiled and said, That's enough. With more than 3,000 people, not to mention one dragon island, even 10 or 100 would not be able to withstand it. With these 3,000 celestial venerables, Su Zimo could sweep through any place except the first-class faction of Kanagai State, the Five Venoms Palace. I'll bring a few supreme heavenly venerables with me, Su Zimo said. My lord, bring me along. A supreme heavenly venerate stood up and volunteered himself. My lord, I also want to help you kill the enemy. Me too. We are also willing to follow you, my lord. Many celestial venerables, grand heavenly venerables, and supreme heavenly venerables were excited as they looked at Su Zimo with anticipation. Some even had a hint of pleading in their eyes. Even the supreme heavenly venerate who had looked down on Su Zimo stood up and cupped his hands. I'm Yang Mo, the supreme heavenly venerate of this place. I'm willing to follow your orders, my lord. Even so, Yang Mo's tone still carried a hint of arrogance. The words supreme heavenly venerate were clearly emphasized. Only those who were invincible in the Tao comprehending realm could be called supreme heavenly venerables. Yang Mo indeed had the right to be arrogant. Supreme Lin Meng said, These people have been trapped in the universe creation diagram since birth, and have never seen the real Great Thousand Worlds. That's why they are so excited. I hope you can forgive them, my lord. Su Zimo could roughly understand how these people felt. Ever since they were born, they had cultivated all the way from the mortal world to the immortal world with great difficulty. Then they ascended to the Tao world and reached this step. In the end, they were told that the world they were in was just a treasure of an expert in the Great Thousand Worlds. This would be a huge blow to their hearts. Some people with weak Tao hearts might even be dispirited. After all, no matter how far they cultivated, they could not leave. Supreme Lin Meng and the others had at least seen the Great Thousand Worlds. As for the other living beings in the universe creation diagram, they did not know what the Great Thousand Worlds looked like. All right, I'll bring all of you out. Su Zimo nodded. The Heaven Masters were overjoyed when they heard this. Thank you, my lord. Everyone shouted loudly. In their hearts, they felt a trace of gratitude towards this unfamiliar lord. The other emperors and supremacies also showed some desire when they heard this. Su Zimo said, You don't have to be anxious. Once we settle down, I'll let all of you leave this place and head to the Great Thousand Worlds. Supreme Lin Meng looked at Yang Mo and the other 3,000 heavenly venerables with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, Listen up. Don't think that you can do whatever you want without any scruples after leaving the universe creation diagram and breaking free of the seal. You must listen to my lord's orders and not disobey. If we leave this place one day and find out who dares to disobey my lord, we will punish you severely. The heavenly venerables agreed loudly. Supreme Lin Meng's tone was stern, as if he was warning the heavenly venerables present. However, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He could vaguely hear the message Supreme Lin Meng was sending him. As long as they left this place, it meant that these people would break free of the seal and not be controlled by the universe creation diagram. It was easy to let these people out, but difficult to get them to return. Su Zimo wouldn't be able to use the universe creation diagram to dictate their life and death. As for these heavenly venerables, they had all cultivated step by step in the three small realms over the past 6 billion years. Their impression of the chaos sacred land was only from Supreme Lin Meng and the others. It was extremely vague. They didn't have deep feelings for the chaos sacred land. There might be some among these heavenly venerables who were unconvinced by his sudden arrival. Among the 3,000 heavenly venerables, there were hundreds of great heavenly venerables, and more than 30 supreme heavenly venerables. Supreme Lin Meng saw that Su Zimo had just entered the Tao comprehending realm and became a heavenly venerate. He was worried that Su Zimo wouldn't be able to suppress this group of people, so he warned him. On one hand, it was to warn the 3,000 heavenly venerables present. On the other hand, it was to let Su Zimo be more careful. Su Zimo looked at Supreme Lin Meng and nodded with a smile, indicating that he understood. With his current means, even if he broke the seal on these heavenly venerables, they wouldn't be able to cause any trouble if they had any ill intentions. End of chapter. Chapter 3276. Dragon Island. In the main hall, the corpses and blood from the battle had been cleaned up. The leaders of the various factions returned to their seats, but the birthday banquet was still not over. However, compared to before, the atmosphere in the main hall was clearly much more oppressive. The Dragon Island Lord's face was gloomy as he stared at the nameless treasure map in his hand, not saying a word. The leaders of the various factions did not dare to speak loudly. When they communicated, they would either speak softly or use their divine senses. No one wanted to attract the Dragon Island Lord's attention at this time and get themselves killed. Who among you knows anything about this treasure map or how to refine it? After a while, the Lord of Serpent Island looked around, raised the nameless treasure map in his hand, and asked in a deep voice. The leaders of the various factions all shook their heads. Take it and pass it around. Whoever can find a way to decipher this map will be rewarded handsomely. The Dragon Island Lord handed the nameless treasure map to a Grand Empyrean on his left. He was still unwilling to give up. If he could open the treasure map, who knew how many treasures were hidden inside? He definitely had a chance to take another step and reach the Tao controlling realm. He had a feeling that the opportunity to break through was in this nameless treasure map. This was Dragon Island. With him in the main hall, he was not worried that someone would dare to run away with the nameless treasure map. The Grand Empyrean on his left checked it repeatedly and said, "There seems to be a universe inside this treasure map that conflicts with the space in the storage bag. That's why it can't be put in the storage bag." "Do I need you to tell me that?" The Dragon Island Lord sneered. He had always carried this treasure map with him and kept it close to his chest. The treasure map could devour anything, so there was naturally a space inside. The Dragon Island Lord glared at the Grand Empyrean and said coldly, "What? You want to put it in the storage bag?" "No, no." The Grand Empyrean was so frightened that he quickly denied it. His hand trembled, and the nameless treasure map fell on the table. "I don't think you dare." The Dragon Island Lord snorted coldly. Just at this moment, the nameless treasure map on the table suddenly floated up on its own, as if it was being controlled by someone. The Dragon Island Lord's eyes lit up. He quickly looked at the Grand Empyrean and asked, "What did you just do?" Such a situation had never happened before. I. It's none of my business." The Grand Empyrean was stunned by the Island Lord's question. His mind was in chaos, and he couldn't speak coherently. After that, under the gazes of everyone present, a figure walked out from the nameless treasure map and stood in the hall. Everyone took a closer look. This person had black hair and green robes. He was actually the Primal Chaos Palace Master, who had just been devoured by the nameless treasure map. "You're not dead?" The Lord of Jiao Dragon Island was not angry. Instead, he was overjoyed and his eyes lit up. This Su Zimo was the first person to come out of the nameless treasure map. This also meant that this person definitely knew how to enter and exit the nameless treasure map. Flood Dragon Island Lord stood up and said, "Su Zimo, tell me how to enter the treasure map. You and those ants from the Chaos Palace may still have a chance to live, His thoughts were all on the nameless treasure map, and he didn't notice that Su Zimo had already stepped into the Tao comprehending realm. Su Zimo smiled gently. It's not certain who will be able to survive. Just as he finished speaking, figures flew out of the universe fortune diagram, one after another like a school of carps crossing the river. In the blink of an eye, they all arrived at the Dragon Palace. There were more than 3,000 people. The lowest cultivation level was a heavenly venerable. There were hundreds of grand empyreans. Hiss! The various leaders gasped when they saw this. They were all dumbfounded and horrified. The Dragon Island Lord's birthday banquet included the leaders of the various second-rate factions. There were only slightly more than 1,000 people. Moreover, they were all heavenly venerates and grand empyreans. There were more than 30 supreme, heavenly venerates who had appeared from the nameless treasure map. The Dragon Island Lord's eyes widened as he watched this scene in disbelief. He was bewildered and panicked to the extreme. What was going on? Why did so many experts appear all of a sudden? That's the Dragon Island Lord. Kill him. Su Zimo waved his hand casually and said indifferently. Yang Emo and the others came to the Dragon Palace and felt the environment of the great wide world. They breathed in the aura of the great wide world and were immersed in it. They didn't attack immediately. Now that they heard Su Zimo's order, they came back to their senses and looked at the Dragon Island Lord with cold eyes. Fellow Taoists, listen to me. I was the one who obtained the nameless treasure map. The Dragon Island Lord hurriedly explained. Seeing that these experts seemed to be obeying Su Zimo's orders, he vaguely guessed that whoever controlled the nameless treasure could control these experts. However, Yang Emo and the others didn't listen to his explanation at all and swarmed forward. The Dragon Island Lord hurriedly propped up a world and activated his bloodline, wanting to resist. However, under the siege of more than 30 supreme heavenly venerates, he was killed on the spot in less than a breath's time. In the universe creation diagram, there were many Tao venerates suppressing them. They had always held back in their battle and stopped when the battle started. Now there were no more restraints. Coupled with the fact that it was their first time in the great wide world, they were unusually excited and wanted to rush to attack. Just the Dragon Island Lord alone was not enough for them. It was a pity that the overlord of the Jiao Dragon Island had the universe fortune map in his possession for many years, but he was unable to do anything about it. Instead, he died under the treasure map. When the leaders of the various factions saw that, their faces turned pale, and they fled in all directions. Yang Emo and the other heavenly venerates attacked and killed in all directions. How could the leaders of the various factions resist? Even a supreme heavenly venerate of Dragon Island could suppress them. Now more than 30 supreme heavenly venerates were a disaster for the various factions. It didn't take long for the leaders of the various forces to be slaughtered. All right, everyone, follow me to the 10,000 Beasts Ridge. Su Zimo was worried about the safety of the 10,000 Beasts Ridge and asked Yang Emo and the others to stop chasing and follow him in the direction of the 10,000 Beasts Ridge. At that moment, the 10,000 Beasts Ridge was already surrounded by the armies of Dragon Island, Giant Spirit Valley, Blackbird Forest, and Frost Snowfield. More than half of the 10,000 Beasts Ridge had been conquered. To be precise, there was no obstruction at all. The four armies charged straight in and killed their way to a mountain peak of the 10,000 Beasts Ridge. Many cultivators of the Primal Chaos Palace were hiding on this mountain peak. There was a restriction array around the mountain peak. Under the constant attacks of the four armies, the array was already showing signs of collapsing. Su Rui, Qin Xianhe, Meng Shi, and the others of the Primal Chaos Palace looked at the army outside the mountain peak with pale faces and despair in their hearts. The array outside the mountain peak was about to collapse. At that time, they would all be buried here. I didn't expect the Primal Chaos Palace to reach this step in the end. With a lonely smile, Su Rui smiled. Qin Xianhe sighed softly. I wonder how the Palace Lord is doing, and whether he can escape from Dragon Island alive. As long as the Palace Lord is still around, the Primal Chaos Palace still has a trace of hope. Ha 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 ha. Grand Heavenly Venerate Long Yu heard their conversation and laughed loudly. The Primal Chaos Palace Lord died on Dragon Island a long time ago. Not even his corpse is left. Su Rue and the other two's eyes dimmed. Sorry to disappoint you. At that moment a voice came from afar. End of chapter. Chapter 3277. Hearing this voice, Su Rue and the other two trembled. The palace master didn't die? Everyone from Chaos Palace subconsciously looked towards the source of the voice and saw a green figure flying over from the distant horizon. It was Su Zimo. The palace master has already reached the Tao comprehending realm. Su Rue was observant and immediately saw that Su Zimo's cultivation had increased. Chen Qianhe and Ming Shi were also overjoyed. Could the Chaos Palace still be saved? But soon, looking at the army that covered the mountains, a trace of worry rose in their hearts. Even if the palace master had reached the Tao comprehending realm and had heaven-defying combat strength, he was only one person. The mountain array here was about to shatter, and the palace master could not split himself to save everyone in the Chaos Palace. Even if the Chaos Palace could be saved, how many of them could be spared? He didn't die. Grand Emperor Long Yu frowned slightly and lowered his head in thought. A trace of unease rose in his heart. This person could actually escape from Dragon Island? Even father couldn't stop him? Right at this moment, a commotion broke out in the crowd. The four armies were thrown into chaos, and there was an uproar. What are you panicking for? Grand Emperor Long Yu was restless and scolded with a frown. He's only one person. Can he overturn the heavens? But his words had no effect at all. Not only that, but some of the demonic beasts in the army had already begun to flee. Grand Emperor Long Yu suddenly felt an earth-shattering pressure surging over, almost engulfing him. His heart skipped a beat, and he looked up. Behind Su Zimo, at the end of the horizon, there was a large group of black figures rushing over. Each of them had a terrifying aura, and they were all Empyrean powerhouses. There were even Grand Empyreans and Supreme Empyreans among them. Hiss! Grand Emperor Long Yu sucked in a cold breath and couldn't help but take a step back. His scalp tingled. The leaders of the other three factions were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They were stunned on the spot. Where did so many Empyrean powerhouses come from? Could it be that the Five Venoms Palace, a first-rate faction in the Canopy State, had appeared? Impossible. Most of the life forms in the Five Venoms Palace were poisonous creatures. And the group of Empyrean powerhouses behind Su Zimo had vigorous vitality. They were clearly all life forms. Everyone from the Primal Chaos Palace looked at this scene in disbelief. Could it be that so many Empyrean powerhouses were all helpers that Palace Lord invited? They couldn't be blamed for being in disbelief. The scene before their eyes had completely shattered everyone's understanding of the world. Not to mention, where could they gather so many Empyrean powerhouses from in such a short time? Even if he could gather these Empyrean powerhouses together, could it be that they would listen to Su Zimo's orders? Su Zimo stepped into the Tao comprehending realm and had just become a celestial venerable. And among the more than 3,000 powerhouses before him, there were Grand Empyreans and Supreme Empyreans. I heard that you want to destroy the Primal Chaos Palace to celebrate your father's birthday. Su Zimo asked Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu when he landed in front of the mountain, where the people of the Primal Chaos Palace were. Aye. Grand Emperor Long Yu was intimidated by Su Zimo's aura and couldn't speak for a while. Even his voice was trembling. More than 3,000 Empyrean powerhouses clustered around Su Zimo, who would not be afraid when they saw it. He doesn't need it anymore. After Su Zimo finished speaking, he casually threw a bloody head in front of Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu. It was the head of Flood Dragon Island Lord. Aya! Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu exclaimed. Su Zimo looked around with a cold expression and waved his sleeves. Kill. On the way here, he had already roughly told Yang Mo and the others about the situation that the Primal Chaos Palace and the living beings of plants had faced over the years. When the Empyreans heard this, they were already filled with resentment. With Su Zimo's order, more than 3,000 Empyrean powerhouses charged into the army and started a massacre. This was really like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. And it was more than 3,000 fierce tigers coming down the mountain. There were hundreds of thousands of people gathered in the army, but under the charge of more than 3,000 Empyreans, they were completely unable to resist and were utterly defeated. Before Su Zimo could make a move, Great Heavenly Venerate Long Yu was instantly killed by Supreme Empyrean Yang Mo. Yang Mo was known as a Supreme Empyrean, and his combat strength was indeed extraordinary. To be precise, when Su Zimo arrived with everyone, there was no longer any suspense in this battle. The three leaders of Giant Spirit Valley, Mystic Bird Forest and Frost Snowfield were already dead. The other Empyrean experts did not last long before they were killed by Yang Mo and the others. The remaining cultivators fled in all directions, defeated for thousands of li, and were even less of a threat. Su Zimo was stunned for a moment before returning to his senses. He was truly not used to such a situation. Up till this point of his cultivation in Tianhuang mainland, he had fought countless battles and experienced countless dangers. When had he ever had such an easy time? The two battles on Flood Dragon Island and Myriad Beast Ridge were settled without him making a move. Seeing that the situation was settled, Su Zimo descended on the mountain peak below and dispelled the surrounding spirit formations. Everyone from the Primal Chaos Palace hurried over in surprise and joy. "Palace Lord, what's going on?" Meng Shi could not help but ask. "Where did you find so many helpers? Furthermore, they are all plant life forms." Su Zimo smiled gently and replied simply, "These are all descendants of the Primal Chaos sacred ground of the past." "Palace Lord, you are truly resourceful and blessed. Haha, our Primal Chaos Palace is truly going to rise this time round." Everyone from the Primal Chaos Palace laughed excitedly. Su Zimo was relieved as well. Previously, although the Primal Chaos Palace occupied the Myriad Beast Ridge and controlled 12 origin mines, they did not have many people, Empyrean experts and supremacies. It was easy to suppress the experts of the other races, but it was difficult to subdue them for the Primal Chaos Palace. Furthermore, after so many years of oppression, the plant life forms of the Primal Chaos Palace were extremely hostile towards the other races. Even if they could temporarily subdue the experts of the other races and leave them in the Primal Chaos Palace, there would be many conflicts in the long run, and they would become hidden dangers. Now, with the help of the plant life forms in the Qiankuan creation diagram, the dilemma faced by the Primal Chaos Palace was perfectly resolved. With Empyrean Yang Maji guarding the Primal Chaos Palace, not only could the territory continue to expand, but Su Zimo did not have to personally come out to solve many problems. More than 3,000 Empyrean experts were enough to deal with most situations. No second-class force would dare to provoke them. This way, Su Zimo had enough time to cultivate in seclusion. After ascending to the Great Thousand World, Su Zimo had not calmed down to cultivate. Previously, the 10 years of seclusion in the Myriad Beast Ridge were also intermittent. To Su Zimo, the most important thing was to raise his cultivation level. As long as he could take another step forward and cultivate to the greater success of the Tao comprehension realm, his essence spirit could break through again and advance to the Tao manipulation realm. This way, he could release the Tao masters in the Qiankuan creation diagram. With the help of hundreds of Tao masters, not to mention the Canopy State, even the entire Southeast Territory could do whatever he wanted. At that time, the Primal Chaos sacred ground would rise. End of chapter. Chapter 3278. A month later, Su Zimo released the supremacies from the universe creation diagram. Under the leadership of Yang Mo and the other Empyrean powerhouses, the Primal Chaos Palace had already conquered the surrounding territories of the Black Goat Ridge, Giant Spirit Valley, Blackbird Forest, and Frost Snow Plains, bringing them into the territory of the Primal Chaos Palace. Everywhere it passed, it was as if it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. No one could stop it. Serpent Dragon Island had also been conquered by the Chaos Palace. The number of source ores under the Chaos Palace's control had already exceeded 100. During the Serpent Dragon Island Lord's birthday banquet, he didn't get any of the gifts sent by the leaders of the various factions. Instead, they fell into Su Zimo's hands. On this day, the Chaos Palace's heavenly venerables gathered in the Chaos Palace. Su Zimo sat on the main seat, and Su Rui, Chen Qianhe, and Meng Shi were also present. "My lord, why did you call us back? Did something happen?" Yang Emo asked. Su Zimo looked at Su Rui and nodded. "You tell me." Su Rui said. "The end of the year is approaching, and the Five Venoms Palace's envoy is about to arrive. Right now, our Chaos Palace's territory has expanded and we've occupied 138 sorcerers. We're already considered the largest second-tier faction in the Canopy Guy state. The amount of sorcerers we have to hand over is also quite shocking, so we have to prepare in advance." Five Venoms Palace. Yang Emo frowned. These days, he had heard that the Five Venoms Palace was the only first-tier faction in the Canopy Guy state, the true overlord. "Why do we have to hand over sorcerers to them?" Yang Emo asked with a frown. Su Rui smiled bitterly. "There's no choice. The Five Venoms Palace has a lot of people, and they have a Dao Venerate expert overseeing it. The other factions don't dare to violate this rule. Actually, it's not just the Canopy Guy state. It's the same in the other states." Yang Emo asked again. "How much do we have to hand over?" 70%. Su Rui answered. "What?" Yang Emo was furious. He slammed the table and shouted, "So much? They're going too far. I can't take this lying down." The other heavenly venerables also had angry expressions. With a helpless expression, Su Rui replied, "Over the years, the 108 provinces in the southeastern region have been occupied by the foreign races, and this has always been the case. For example, in the Canopy state, the various second-tier powers have to hand over 70% of their origin stones to the Five Venoms Temple every year. The various second-rate forces did not dare to disobey this order, so they could only turn around and deal with the third-rate forces under their command, demanding that the third-rate forces all hand over 90%. Third-tier factions don't dare to disobey, or they'll be wiped out. After all the plundering, third-tier factions can only obtain 10% of source ores each year, which isn't enough for cultivation. Therefore, many battles and killings often erupt between the third-grade forces. The Primal Chaos Palace's Empyrean powerhouses all frowned when they heard this. The Five Venoms Palace relied on their strength to be unshakable. That was why they were so unbridled, and enjoyed the fruits of others' labor. Under this pressure, the other factions in the Kanagai state could only kill each other if they wanted to obtain more cultivation resources. Yang Emo asked, "Previously, did the Primal Chaos Palace hand over 70% every year?" Nodding his head, Su Rui replied, "Ever since we occupied the Myriad Beast Ridge, we've been handing over 70% every year. However, the Palace Master has ordered us not to plunder the Genesis ores of the other third-rate forces." Yang Emo glanced at Su Zimo as he thought to himself, "This master is still a little too weak. He doesn't have any edge, and he doesn't even dare to resist being bullied like this. However, he's quite benevolent and didn't bully the weak." Su Zimo did not say anything, his expression indifferent. Although he was extremely conflicted when the Five Venoms Palace came to collect Genesis ores over the past 10 years, he did not show it, and allowed Su Rui and the others to hand over the Genesis ores as per normal. Firstly, he was not strong enough, and it was unwise to become enemies with the Five Venoms Palace over such a small matter. Even if he could survive, the Primal Chaos Palace's people would not be able to escape death. To him, the most important thing was to seize the time to cultivate and raise his cultivation level. Secondly, even if only 30% of the Genesis ores were left, with Qingmian's true body, he could gather as much Genesis Qi as possible to help the Primal Chaos Palace's people cultivate. At the very least, the Primal Chaos Palace's people did not lack cultivation resources. "Palace Master, do you have other arrangements for us to be gathered here?" Yang Emo asked. Su Zimo said, "I'm telling you this as a reminder. Hand over 70% of the Genesis ores as per normal, and don't clash with the Five Venoms Palace for the time being." Yang Emo and the others fell silent. They had cultivated in the universe creation diagram since they were young, and had never suffered any setbacks. Each and every one of them was proud and arrogant, and naturally did not fear the Five Venoms Palace. Of course, they also knew in their hearts. The Five Venoms Palace had a Tao sovereign expert overseeing it. The Tao sovereigns in the universe creation diagram could not come out, and it was indeed impossible for them to fight against the Five Venoms Palace. Su Zimo continued. In addition, the Primal Chaos Palace's territory is already large enough. Stop expanding. Why is that? Yang Emo frowned deeply, and could not help but ask. Even his tone had changed. It was fine if they followed Su Zimo's arrangements and handed over 70% of the Genesis ores to the Five Venoms Palace. But now, they were not allowed to continue expanding? Yang Emo said in a low voice. We have to hand over 70% of the Genesis ores every year, and we don't have many cultivation resources to begin with. If we don't plunder the other third-tier factions, we can only invade the territories of the second-tier factions. Furthermore, the Southeast Territory belongs to the plant race to begin with. It's reasonable for us to take it back since the alien races are occupying it. That's right. The alien races have bullied us for so many years. We should have chased them out long ago. Palace Master, there's no need to sympathize with them. The other heavenly venerables spoke as well. Su Zimo's expression did not change as he said, right now, the Primal Chaos Palace is already the largest second-tier faction in Kanagai State. If you continue expanding, you'll definitely attract the attention of the Five Venoms Palace and bring trouble to yourself. A Supreme Heavenly Venerable said coldly. Do you think our Primal Chaos Sacred Land is afraid of the Five Venoms Palace? They cultivated in the universe creation diagram all year round and had hundreds of Tao sovereigns around them. Naturally, they did not take the Five Venoms Palace seriously. However, those Tao sovereigns were of no help at all. To Su Zimo, he could only go against the Five Venoms Palace if he improved his cultivation realm and released those Tao sovereigns. During this period, it was not appropriate to clash with the Five Venoms Palace. This is only a temporary measure. Su Zimo said indifferently, everyone, just follow my orders. The few Supreme Heavenly Venerables were still indignant and looked at Yang Emo instinctively. After all, Yang Emo was a Supreme Heavenly Venerable in the universe creation diagram and had great prestige among the Heavenly Venerables. Understood. Although he was unhappy, Yang Emo could not say anything. After all, Supreme Heavenly Venerable Lin Meng had warned them not to disobey Su Zimo's orders in the universe creation diagram. Yang Emo and the other Heavenly Venerables stood up and left. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. At least in the future, he could cultivate in peace. End of chapter. Chapter 3279. Outside Wansho Ridge, the various Empyreans all left, some still feeling indignant, feeling discontent in their hearts. Senior Brother Yang, are we really going to follow the Palace Lord's orders and stop the expansion? The person who spoke was also a Supreme Celestial Venerable named Li Hun. In the universe fortune diagram, the few of them were as close as real brothers and were bosom buddies. Among them, Yang Emo was the leader. Five Venoms Temple has indeed gone too far. The person who spoke was a beautiful woman named Kai Wei, who was also a Supreme Empyrean. Kai Wei said, however, what the Asgard Lord said makes sense. If a conflict were to erupt with the Five Venoms Palace, because of this, with our current strength, we would not be able to withstand it. Li Hun said angrily. I can't take this lying down. Palace Lord, aren't you a little too cowardly? I'm not convinced that you're serving him as your master. He's just relying on Qinglian's bloodline to gain the recognition of the universe fortune diagram. Apart from that, in terms of cultivation, battle prowess, and prestige, how can he compare to Senior Brother Yang? Li Hun. Yang Emo scolded and shook his head. Don't ever say such words again. Although he said that, in his heart, he didn't really approve of this master. Yang Emo said, the Palatial Lord is most likely thinking of compromising temporarily. When his essence spirit realm advances further, and he steps into the Tao manipulation realm, he will release Master and the others before making arrangements. If we wait for him to improve his cultivation, how long would we have to wait? Li Hun curled his lips and said, I estimate that senior brother Yang won't be able to make any breakthroughs even after he reaches the Dao manipulation realm. Yang Yemo faintly smiled and looked into the distance. His gaze was firm as he slowly said, no matter which one of us is able to take another step forward, we will be able to rewrite the fate of the Primal Chaos Palace. When Su Zimo returned to the cave abode, he did not cultivate immediately. Instead, he returned to the universe fortune diagram. He still had many questions about the universe fortune diagram. Master. Upon sensing Su Zimo's arrival, Autark Lin Meng and the others appeared one after another. How much do you know about the turmoil in the vast thousand world back then? As Su Zimo's cultivation base continued to rise, he discovered that the origins of many things were related to the Great Upheaval more than 6 billion years ago. The destruction of the Primal Chaos Qinglian, the destruction of the Primal Chaos Sacred Land, the fall of the Demonic Emperor, and the others into the Middle World, and the arrival of the Celestial Quartz Masters to seal the Middle World. We don't know the exact reason. Supreme Lin Ming said, that great upheaval affected the saints of the Great Thousand Realms, the 8 great sacred grounds, and all living beings in the world. Even we didn't have the qualifications to participate in it directly. We were only affected by it. Even Tao Masters did not know the reason. 8 great holy lands. Su Zimo's heart stirred, and he asked, apart from the Primal Chaos Sacred Land, what are the other 7 sacred lands? 6 billion years ago, the Heaven Punishment Sacred Land was located in the east, the Ancestral Fire Sacred Land in the south, the Void Sacred Land in the west, and the Yin-Yang Sacred Land in the north, the Space-Time Sacred Land in the northeast, the Life Sacred Land in the southwest, and the Reincarnation Sacred Land in the northwest. Su Zimo nodded. Including the Primal Chaos Sacred Land in the southeast, there were 8 sacred lands. Supreme Lin Ming continued. However, because of that great upheaval, the Life Sacred Land and the Reincarnation Sacred Land suffered heavy losses in addition to the Primal Chaos Sacred Land. They should have been destroyed as well. A single upheaval had caused the destruction of 3 sacred lands in the Great Thousand Realms. It seemed that the Demonic Emperor and the others were most likely related to the other 2 sacred lands that had been destroyed. The black-robed man in the Blood Sea ruins might even be one of them. 6 paths of reincarnation. Su Zimo's mind suddenly flashed with the image of the 6 paths of abyss that he had seen in the Nether Hell. It seemed to be able to devour everything. The Reincarnation Sacred Lord. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he thought of a possibility. After pondering for a while, Su Zimo asked again, Sacred Lord, does it mean the master of a sacred land, or a realm above the Saint Realm? It's the abbreviation for the master of a sacred land, Supreme Lin Meng said. Supreme Lin Meng said, however, the 8 sacred lords are all above the Saint Realm. They are called great saints. When a living being and the great Tao completely merge to become a saint, there is no distinction between them. This is the secret of the saint's eternal life. As long as the great Tao exists, the saints will not die. Even if a saint's soul is destroyed, as long as the great Tao still exists, the saint can still borrow the power of the great Tao to come back to life and return to the peak. Su Zimo nodded inwardly. It was only at this moment that he truly understood the secret of eternal life. Turning into the great Tao and becoming a saint would give one eternal life. What is a great saint? Su Zimo asked again. Supreme Lin Ming answered. It is said that a great saint has the power to destroy the great Tao. When saints fight, they cannot completely kill each other. A saint's power is not enough to destroy the great Tao. They can still come back to life after death. However, a great saint has the power to destroy the great Tao. Su Zimo was enlightened. In other words, if a great saint made a move and wiped the great Tao of the other party from the world, the other party would never be able to come back to life. A saint had eternal life and endless lifespan, but it did not mean that they were immortal. The 8 sacred masters of the past were all great saints, and had the power to kill saints. They had already cultivated to this level, and could be said to be at the peak of the 3 realms. Why had such an intense conflict erupted between them and caused such a huge upheaval that swept across the three realms? If he guessed correctly, the 9 sacred masters of the heavenly courts should have been saints from the other 5 sacred grounds. Their true purpose was to prevent the demon lord, the evil emperor, and the others from returning to the greater world. However, since the demon lord, the evil emperor, and the others had already fallen into the middle world, why did the 5 sacred masters not descend and completely wipe them out to prevent future trouble? There were still many questions regarding this matter. However, experts at Supreme Lin Meng's level could no longer come into contact with them. Why can't one enter the Saint realm in the universe fortune diagram? Su Zimo asked. Supreme Lin Meng said, the universe fortune diagram is only a sacred artifact after all. It has its limitations. Even if there's a universe and fortune within it, it's at most a speck of dust in the 3 realms. There are 3,000 great Taos inside. But if you want to merge them into a complete great Tao, it's only possible to return to the greater world. Su Zimo fell silent deep in thought. He'd already refined the universe fortune diagram and merged a wisp of chaos chi within it into his chaotic world. He had a feeling that the original purpose of the universe fortune diagram might not be just a weapon. Have you heard of the virtuous golden lotus and the black lotus of destruction? Su Zimo asked. Supreme Lin Meng and the others knew nothing about the chaos Qinglian, so they might not know about the virtuous golden lotus and the black lotus of destruction. However, these 2 lotuses were too important to Su Zimo. If he wanted to increase his cultivation level, the fastest way was to merge the 2 remaining lotuses. Improving his physical body and bloodline was only one of them. After merging with them, he could also complete his inherited memories. With these memories, he'd be able to comprehend the great Tao of chaos more easily. Supreme Lin Meng and the others shook their heads with blank expressions. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.